Hey TV fans, Bored Now and Rachel Macdonald back with you, and this is going to be our special video looking at Buffy Season 2. We are working our way through each season with individual videos. We're obviously going to pick apart our sort of highlights, lowlights, favourite episodes, stuff like that. There will be a separate video for our top and bottom episodes of the season as well. And just an overview of the season. So this was a big game-changing season for the show. This was a massive turning point in the Buffyverse, where a certain development with a certain character in the middle of season 2 changed the whole course of things. It's of course also the season where Spike debuts as a villain alongside the lovely Drusilla. And I think they just sort of up the game in general for what a vampire can be in this universe, and the quality of the villains. And then obviously to top it off, like the big dramatic twist with Angel's character, him going to the dark side. And I think that's something which it's such a big thing in the Buffyverse. Then you could probably just say then Angel, the show wouldn't have happened without it, because I think a big reason for that show happening is because you suddenly had all this backstory and different things you could do with him, ups and downs, especially in the first part. But we're going to get into the season and break it apart and see what we think of it overall. So Rachel, some thoughts on the season to start off with.
I love season 2. It used to be my favorite season of Buffy. Like you said, it's a big game changer. It really starts to build the mythology. You know, obviously when we discussed season 1, it was very much monster of the week. There wasn't really a big arc. I mean, we had a little bit with the Master, but for the most part, it was like that kind of fun 90s monster of the week storylines. Whereas with season 2, we start to get some really meaty storylines, some really good mythology, some really great characterization. I think Spike, Drusilla, and Angel/Angelus like really elevate, like you said, elevate the vampire lore and elevate the threat of the vampires, you know, because before this, they were basically just generic monsters. We didn't really have, aside from the Master, we didn't really have vampires with personalities and dynamics and connections and relationships. This is the first time we actually get to see like a vampire family, so to speak, and see how the dynamics work. And I don't know if I've mentioned this, but the very first episode of Buffy that I ever saw was Becoming. So that is like a big way to be introduced to the show. And so that probably explains my enduring love for the Angel relationship, and also my love for season 2. I also really love, we spoke about when we did season 1, how season 1 has a bit of a more of a horror feel. You know, it does feel a little bit more like cheesy 90s horror. I love that season 2 moves into gothic horror. We definitely get more gothic horror in season 2. A lot of the sets, Drusilla brings a lot of gothic horror, you know, with her persona and her menace, the way she dresses, her aesthetic. And of course, obviously with Angel turning evil, that definitely brings in a bit of a gothic horror soap opera angle. I think the characters in season 2 are fantastic. We really will get into talking about some of the growth that some of them go through. A couple in particular, which we'll get around to talking to, for me, really like impressed this season. We get Jenny Calendar. We get more of Jenny Calendar, and she's a great character. She's a lot of fun. We get Oz this season, and this season actually has some of my favorite dynamics and relationships in the Buffyverse. So as we talk more about the season, we'll definitely get into that. So I do think, like you said, the season gets off to a bit of a slow start, and I do think that does drag it down a little bit. There are some dud episodes in season 2 that I think sometimes bring down the overall season. But I think season 2, when it's at its best, it is some of the best work in the show, I think. Some of the episodes and the scenarios and the scenes and the dynamics that we get this season are so good. And I think the show really starts to find its stride this season. You know, it really starts to get a foothold on what themes it wants to explore, where it wants to go with Buffy herself as the Slayer, where it wants to go with its other characters. And I think you see a lot of the groundwork being laid in this season. So yeah, I really enjoy this season, and I had a lot of fun rewatching. I have seen Buffy so many times to the point where I can quote entire episodes, but it has been years since I've actually sat down and fully watched it, and I found myself just having so much fun rewatching it this time around. How did you go with the rewatch this
Yeah,
time?
I'm pretty much on the same page. There's some great emotional highs in this season. Obviously, the middle of the season with the stuff with Angelus and the turn and its effects on Buffy. I mean, but yeah, it does get to a point in the middle where it does feel like the show really starts from then on, and it really, starts. We start seeing the maturity in the writing and just it going to a whole new level. Because obviously that big middle two part, like innocent, surprise, and then it's such a like standout for the show and for the season. The emotional, poetic sort of end to the season we get, and yeah, like you said, they just really build very nicely on the characters. Oz feels like a natural fit for the Scoobies. He had something different. I really enjoyed Jenny and Giles, their dynamic, their relationship. Yeah. Obviously, much to unpack with what happens with them. But yeah, it is a very strong season. I'm pretty much on the same page as you, that it does take a while to get going. Like in general, there are obviously good episodes. Like I obviously really like Spike's debut episode, School Hard, but it does feel like there are some episodes that are a bit left over from season one, and it is a bit inconsistent that way, where it's sort of the highs are very highs, but also the lows are maybe some of the lowest of the whole show. So, but no, in general, I think it's a very good season, and I would say the Angelus storyline and that arc and the way it like ramps up towards the end of the season, because I think they also do a really good job of keeping him relevant, even in episodes where it's not really about him, where he doesn't feature that strongly. I
agree.
Which makes sense, because they're obviously keeping that threat alive and like kind of showing that he is still around, healed by death. His little cameo appearance in that is a good example of doing that. It's one of the best arc on Buffy as a show.
Oh, definitely.
And, yeah, it was great to see David Boreanaz like come into his own and play a version of himself. You can see he's really enjoying it, and
he is, isn't he?
He makes
definitely
a very like menacing villain, and there's something great about the trio of them, Spike, Drusilla, and Angelus. Just the way they play off each other. There's a lot of like macabre fun with them and different stuff.
Before off camera that you are not a massive fan of the Buffy and Angel relationship. So because this season is so heavily centered around that, I was wondering how you went rewatching it. Did you still find that you disliked it, or did you find things that maybe you liked more than last time? How did you go watching that particular relationship?
Yeah, no, I don't dislike it. Like I think this season it's strong, and I think obviously the turnaround and the twist of his character and him going evil, I think leads to some great stuff, and like and obviously that only reconfirms like the emotional impact of the relationship, but also how complex it is and maybe how doomed it is ultimately. Then even in an ideal scenario where they do bring Angel back at the last minute and get his soul back, probably ideally there's still hurdles that means they can't really ultimately be. Some of it, because some of it does fall into more of like the sort of tweeny Twilight Zone type melody, and that's just not really my thing. I mean, it's partly because it's not really what I come to a show like Buffy for. I mean, obviously if I'm watching something which is meant to be romantic, then I can sort of enjoy it for what it is in a way. But but no, I still find it a strong relationship and really good chemistry. And but yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily this season that I have There's certain like I'm not like the ice skating stuff in the What's My Line.
What's my line?
Yeah, I kind of hate that scene. That scene, and the music is so cheesy, and I just find the whole him taking her ice skating and it's just a pretty goofy scene. Like
Oh, but it's so cute.
And I tell you
And
what's quite bad about it is it almost has. And I never thought I'd mention this in a Buffy review, but you know that terrible line at the end of Four Weddings and the Funeral when they're in the rain? And
no, I've never seen it.
Oh, okay.
I've never
Damn
seen
it,
that movie.
doesn't work. Well, it's a good movie, but it's probably ruined by the end line. But it's a line when Hugh Grant and Andy Riddell are in the rain, and like he gives a speech about something to do with like two people standing in the rain and like telling that me telling you I love you or something. And the line she gives back to him is it raining? I hadn't noticed. It's terrible. And there's a similar line in this. You know when he's like sort of like it's the monster
in
face.
Vamp face. Yeah, but I mean that serves a point. That thing. Like I can understand if you might find it too cheesy.
It is a bad line though.
But it is supposed to emphasize that Buffy does not see Angel as a vampire. That to her, he is just the person that she loves. And look, I think I like. Okay, so the scene where Sarah is actually just skating on the ice by herself and they have that music playing, I do think that's a little cheesy, and I do think that was put in solely so that they could be like, hey, look, Sarah's a figure skater as well. Like, it does seem like they put that in just to show that Sarah, because I'm pretty sure Sarah is actually a figure skater, or did figure skating when she was younger or something. Yeah, so I think they put that part in just to be like, you know, the cast shows off. Like, let's show that Sarah's got some skills other than just being an actress. But I think the lead up to it and that episode in particular, because that episode is very much emphasizing Buffy feeling different, Buffy feeling left out. You know, they're all talking about careers and their jobs, and obviously because she's the Slayer, she has that whole well, I'm gonna die young thing hanging over my head. And she's talking to Angel, and again this kind of emphasizes that Angel is kind of her safe space at this point, which of course then becomes so devastating in the second half when he turns. But Angel's the person that she can go to and be vulnerable with. And she talks about wanting to be normal and wanting to have a normal life. And so Angel offering to take her to the skating rink is him trying to give her that. And again, that kind of plays into the theme of Angel, that they can't have a normal life because he's a vampire. So while I do understand, like I said, the actual scenes of Sarah skating, definitely weird and a bit out of place. And I understand why you might find the dialogue in the vamp face cheesy. I think it really does serve a very important point, which is, to Buffy, Angel isn't a monster. Angel isn't a vampire. And again, it will really sets up then when it's a
little Beauty and the Beast sort of thing in
a way.
A
little bit like that. Yes. It's also a nice little callback to in season 1 when Angel reveals that he's a vampire to Buffy. Darla's taunting him and she's all like, what did you think would happen? Did you think that she would see your face, your real face, and give you a kiss? And in this episode, she does. She sees Angel's vamp face and she kisses him. So again, when it comes to the Angel relationship, there are definitely moments and scenes where I understand why people go, come on, this is too dramatic. Like, there are some scenes in this season where even I go, who wrote this? So I do understand that it can get a little cheesy and a little over dramatic, but I think what they're trying to portray works really well. And I think that's the emphasis of that.
Is it still raining? I hadn't noticed.
You shouldn't have to touch me when I'm like this.
Oh. I didn't even notice.
parts 1 and part 2. Again, kind of a game changer, those episodes, because
yeah, that's when
Kendra,
it feels like they're
I mean, we get the introduction of Kendra, which was one of the best reveals on the show.
That's a smart reveal.
That was a great one.
And the subversion, because the subversion with them setting her up as like the third. Is it like the Order of Taraka?
Yes, the Order of Taraka. Yes.
Sort of name, and Giles gives it the big sell, and there's some good stuff with them. I enjoyed the bug guy, the stuff with him.
Yes, poor Cordy and Xander, and their first.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about.
We'll talk more about them.
But it's a good relationship. I really enjoy Cordy and Xander this season, and there's some good. I like in the episode. I think it's part 1. I actually enjoyed the exchange between Xander and Snyder at one point, where like Snyder's trying to run him down, and that comes out of your mouth is like a toxic born waste of space.
Waste of space.
Yeah. And I actually like Xander's reply when he's like, "I'm glad you can be this honest. I hope one day I'm in a position
to be that honest with you." Yeah.
That's a really good exchange. But yeah, that's the strong tea part of that. That's a good, this starting to feel like you're really getting into the meat of the character.
Yeah.
Buffy's conflict, where she's starting to like daydream about having a regular life and looking at like a regular career. That's a big theme of the show, especially in the early years in some ways when she's still in high school. But yeah, there's some good stuff in that episode. So, I mean, to sort of jump back to the early part of the season, it gets off to a pretty good start the season. Like the opening episode, I think, When She Was Bad is a good, pretty solid opening to the season. I do actually like the detail of it just being trauma in that episode for Buffy, that she's acting weird. It's not that it's anything supernatural, which you start to wonder. And it just sort of fits the metaphor of the show very well, how people do sometimes just act out of character when they've gone through an experience like that, an ordeal. There's some good stuff with her.
There is.
And I like the exchange with her and Cordy outside the bronze, actually. That's a very good scene where
you're really in her own bit of the year, aren't you?
they're fantastic together in that scene, and I do like that in her own way Cordy is trying to give her advice and look out for her.
Cordy's got some great moments this season. We'll talk more about that, but Cordy actually gets some really good growth this season and, starts to integrate a bit more into the Scoobies. Yeah. She Was Bad, I do think is one of the better season openers, because I actually do think that Buffy doesn't always have the best season openers. It can be a bit weak sometimes. That's just my opinion, but I don't mind When She Was Bad. It can be hard to take, I think, sometimes, because you do watch Buffy being quite harsh with her friends for no reason. But but when you think about what she went through at the end of season 1, I mean, the girl literally died. How do you come back from that? So the fact that she has so much trauma over that is so believable. And I think the show does a good job of showing how that trauma is affecting her.
Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect episode, but I do think it is a solid opener, and it'll be interesting to keep track of the season openers, because I think a lot of them are at least solid, but maybe not too spectacular. Season 3 opener is very underrated. I think that doesn't get enough love, actually, the opening episode.
It's interesting. We'll definitely see how we go
when we get there. But it's a pretty good calling card, and I like them. We get a distinct sort of bronze theme with the guest band Tubo Mana, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I really enjoy that song.
Although that scene, though,
it's very painful to watch. Isn't
and I think that is actually one of Buffy's worst moments in that episode, because she's hurting 3 people in that episode. She's hurting Willow, Xander, and Angel, and it's like, oh, Buffy, 3 for 1 in one go.
And I do like the way it's directed, because Angel's in the bronze as well, so it's like cuts between them. It's good direction. You see her impacting on these like 3 or 4 different lives in one scene. It's pretty. I do actually have a question, because I don't think I asked you this in season 1, but About the Bronze as a club, like, how do you like see it? Do you see it as somewhere that like is a club that's run by the high school and so it's for high school students, or do you see it as just somewhere where they just happen to let high school students in, like on a certain night of the week?
Yeah, no, I think it's just, I think because Sunnydale is so small, I think it's just supposed to be one of those places where pretty much anyone can go. And I'm guessing that even though high school students can go there, they obviously won't serve alcohol to them, which we see in season 3 when Anya tries to order a beer at the bar. So yeah, because we actually, in my town, we actually had a club that was similar to that, called Toast, of all things, where basically you could go there if you were in high school, but it was an actual club, but they would let anyone in. So yeah, that's how I see the Bronze, that it really is just one of those small town clubs where it's like Claudie says in season 1, they'll let anyone in, but you know, because we don't really have anywhere else in town.
To Lifeland, sometimes clubs will just let underage people in because they sort of run the business, so it's not that far-fetched, and they would just, you know, especially if they're close to being the right age, they might just think, well, 1 or 2 years either way, they'd probably be all right. So no, I think that probably is it, but it's a very like 90s style club. It has that sort of feel to it. Yeah, but it's a really good-looking club and a big part.
They must
of
have great insurance there. I mean, the amount of times that place gets trashed.
Shit that happens. A weaker episode after that, don't you? Which is some assembly.
Some assembly required.
Which I like to say, some plot assembly required.
Yeah, look, I don't mind some assembly required, but it feels like a very confused Frankenstein story. You know, like they wanted to do Frankenstein, but they didn't quite know how to do it.
It's a little bit of a mess, isn't it?
It's a little bit all over the place, very creepy in some places. The guy, the guy who is always taking photos of all the girls.
Oh yeah, like, he's a fucking little slime bag, isn't he?
He's a creepy little fucker.
He dies, doesn't he? And he probably deserves to die, to be fair.
So I think some assembly required is quite forgettable. You know, it's one of those episodes that when you rewatch the season, you're like, oh right, this episode exists. You know, like you just, there's nothing too offensive in it that makes it like, oh, we hate this episode. It's just kind of there and doesn't really do anything. Yeah,
and I think it's a good example of what we've spoken about with Buffy, where even the weaker episodes are usually watchable because the Scooby stuff, we enjoy that. And there's good Scooby stuff in that.
There is, yes.
It's just overall the main plot is a weaker one, and you know, I don't know, these kids seems a bit too talented with the old science.
Yes.
Really.
It's like, could a high school student really assemble like a whole body? That's a little creepy. That being said, there are some highlights to this episode. This is the first time we see Xander rescue Claudie. Literally runs through fire for her, and then at the end of the episode, he's complaining to Willow about how, you know, no one ever notices him, and Claudie comes up and starts thanking him. He's just like, "Do you mind? We're talking here." And he's like, "What were we talking about? No one ever notices us." Right. Why do you think that is? And just, I think that's
I think that's the episode where Giles and Jenny sort of have their first date, like unofficial in a way, but that's one of the better scenes.
And it has one of my favorite scenes when Giles is practicing asking Jenny out, and Buffy and Xander come in and hear him. Scene. And that's a great scene. Buffy's got some great lines in it. Stop using such long words. Speak English, not whatever they speak in England. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. And yeah, I just think, that whole scene. And Jenny and Giles, I forgot how sweet they are. We're going to talk so much more about Jenny and Giles.
Yeah, she's very good for him. Like they fit well.
They fit well. It's nice to see Giles be a little bit flustered and, you know, a little bit younger. He doesn't quite know.
And I quite enjoy, you know, when she takes him monster truck in one of the and just his reaction to it, like he's being all sarcastic about it.
That's just monster trucks. I thought it would be a change. Oh, it was a change. I think that Jenny's really good for Giles because she pushes him out of his comfort zone, which is kind of what Giles needs sometimes, you know, because he's so stuffy and he stays in his lane and he's so serious and he's got his watcher duty. So he needs someone young and hip and fun like Jenny. And I think that Tony and Rabia have really good chemistry. And I think that their flirtiness and like their fun. I love the scene where she gives him back like a first edition copy of a book or something, and she's talking about how like she's dog-earing the pages and then how she's like highlighting bits, and she's like, Rupert, calm down, I'm just trying to make you squirm. He's like, oh yes, I trust I gave good squirm. It's just so yeah, those early episodes, there is some good development of Giles and Jenny, and you know, Cordy, you start to see a little bit of the foundation for Cordy and Xander. But yeah, some assembly required, not great. But then we move on to School Hard, which is a fan favorite, I know. I am not a I don't hate it by any means. I think it's a solid episode. It's just not one of my favorites. Okay. And it's probably got something more to do with the fact that I'm not a Spike stan. You know, like I like Spike all well and good, but I find that he takes up so much space in the fandom that I tend to tune out a little bit when he's around. So, but I do like his and Drew's.
Mind you, this is at a point where that's not really happened.
Yes, but unfortunately, having spent 20 years in the Buffy fandom, unfortunately, you know, you carry the fandom with you a little bit sometimes when you're watching the series. So yeah, but a great introduction.
Yeah, very good. And it's worth saying that, like with some of characters in this show, originally it was going to be a much smaller part. And like I think he was only going to last this season, but they obviously, he took off and the fans got into him. And yeah, just the introduction, you know, like him crashing through the Sunnydale sign. And I mean, that's one of the best entrances ever, and just stumbles out drunk. And yeah, he just really some great stuff when he's like monologuing in that episode. I enjoy, you know, the line about Woodstock, you know.
I was going to talk about that. If every vampire who said they were at the crucifixion was there, it'd be like, what's up? He's like, me, I was at Woodstock. I fed off a flower person. Spent the next 5 hours watching my hand move. Yeah, that one's good.
Yeah, no, he's just great, you know, because, I mean, obviously, partly the episode is, like, titled after Die Hard, so the stuff in the school, you know, where he's like, someone's in the ceiling. He just has this great presence to him, and he just takes control. I quite like the scene where he uses, like, the vamp's head to, like, get the fire thing out, or, like, smashes it into... And he's like, start using
your head. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, him and Drew on screen, they're just so hypnotic. I love her sort of music when she first comes on screen. It's just so well done.
Juliet Landau is just a revelation as Drusilla. Yeah. She is brilliant. I could not imagine anyone else playing that part. She just has that kind of eeriness to her, you know, like I think as you go on and you watch the series more, you tend to forget how menacing she and Spike really were when they first turned up. Like, they were really creepy and really scary villains. And obviously School Hard is more around Spike and seeing how badass he is and how terrifying he is. But as the season goes on, we get to see more and more of Drusilla, and she is just terrifying. I love it.
Yeah, there's almost this thing where in some ways she's even scarier than Spike because she is the more unstable of the two, whereas with him, maybe you know what you get in, maybe there's a method to his madness, but with her she is like the more unstable and vulnerable, and it's, you know, it's once again credit to the show that even though they are villains, you do invest in them as a couple sort of thing. So
absolutely. Their relationship chemistry. It is, and it's fantastic. And I just love, because this is the first time you really see that vampires can actually have these kinds of relationships. You know, we didn't really see that in season 1. Like the fact that when Drusilla walks in, Spike actually changes from vamp face to human face, you know, or how gentle he is with her. And just, they have some of the funniest exchanges in season 2, just because Drew is so crazy and Spike's always trying to like appease her. Like there's that scene where her bird has died and he's just like, The bird's dead, Drew.
Yeah.
You left it in a cage and you didn't feed it, and now it's all dead, just like the last one. And then she starts to like cry, and he's all like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a bad, rude man." And I'm like, it's just so good. School Hard, however, has a great moment between Angel and Spike and Xander, which kind of helps to explain why Xander hates Angel. I mean, I know Xander's always hated Angel, but, you know, Angel taking Xander and pretending to be evil and pretending to bite him with
really
Spike.
good.
But then afterwards, Xander's like yelling at him. He's like, well, what would have happened if he bit me? And Angel's like, well, then we would have known he bought it. And I'm like, that's terrible. No wonder Xander hates you. Xander has a line in What's My Line Part 2 that I think perfectly sums up his and Angel's relationship. When Kendra's talking about Angel and Xander's like, hey, Angel's our friend, except I don't like him. And I'm like, that right there, that perfectly sums it up.
I do like, because there are scenes where they really make it fun how competitive, because I quite like, it's one of the episodes in this, and one of the, you know, when they're reading the newspaper at the Bronze and they keep talking, and Angel's like behind him,
boy.
Xander's slagging him off,
Angel,
and he just
Angel.
looks back, it's like, all right.
That's right. He's like, Angel. Does every conversation we have to center around that freak? Hey man, how you doing?
And
then later on, the same scene, they're like, Angel, Buffy, Xander. Xander Harris. More people should love Xander Harris. I know he's problematic at times. He's also a 17-year-old boy. You know, we've got to cut him a little bit of slack. Like, sometimes he's just stupid. But I think
a lot of times when he needs to come through, he does come through. That's sort of the important thing. Yeah, it almost the amount of dodgy like lines and stuff he said, or like acting immature, is almost like wiped away as soon as he does something really sort of heroic sort of thing.
And there is a moment in When She Was Bad where it shows that his crush on Buffy is not so all-encompassing that it wipes everything out. And it's a moment that I really love. It's after they've taken Willow and Giles, after Buffy's fallen for the trap, and she comes back to the library and Xander's there, and he has a moment, he's just like, I don't care what your issues are. If they hurt Willow, I will kill you. Because I've always loved Xander's protectiveness over Willow. And the way that he will always put his relationship with Willow over his feelings for Buffy, I think is a really important part of his character, to show that he doesn't just blindly have a crush on Buffy. Yes, he's got a crush on Buffy. Yes, he, you know, wants to date her and stuff, but he loves Willow and he will always protect Willow. And I always loved that scene. I thought it was a really great moment.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because at times, the line that I really don't like from him, that for us, it's in Some Assembly. You know, when he makes the line about sometimes people don't, you know, fall for what's in front of them.
Because people, they want the unattainable.
Yeah, that's a terrible.
It's a little too pointed, isn't it? It's like, okay, Xander, let's step back here. Like, calm down, buddy. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Generally, he's obviously a great guy, a great friend, and very loyal as well. He is, you know, he's very good when it comes to loyalty. Yeah. Like, I mean, when he comes through, he really comes through.
Yeah, and when you think about the fact that Xander, like, he's just a human. I know at this point Willow hasn't really started with the magics. We don't see that until later on in the season. But, you know, like, Xander's always been surrounded by vampires and slayers and this and that. But he's always just ready to fight. He will throw himself right into the fight to save people. Like I said, in Some Assembly Required, he literally runs through fire for Cordelia. I think, or in Reptile Boy, when he goes into the frat house and ends up getting humiliated just so that he can try and protect Buffy. You know, he's got a lot of really great moments. I mean, yeah, he's a complete idiot sometimes. And are we going to talk about Becoming Part 2?
Yeah, that's something I've got down to talk about.
Yeah. But I love Xander, and I think that he gets a very harsh very harsh rap in the Buffy fandom. I think people hate on him for reasons that don't really exist. I think they project onto him. I think that I've seen a lot of time people say that he acts entitled to Buffy. I've never seen that. Yes, he has a crush on her. Yes, sometimes he might let it slip about his crush. But after season 1, he never hits on her or tries to become romantic with her, he knows that she only sees him as a friend, and he's happy to just be her friend. I mean, sometimes he says some stuff behind her back, but he never really says it to her face, until Angel goes evil, and then we've got a whole different
because one moment I don't really like, and it's in phases, is the scene with him and Buffy where they imply romance, where that just seems to come out of nowhere. Like and maybe it's just one of those things where sometimes working side by side night you might occasionally have some sexual tension. Maybe that's what they're saying, but and it's not really a critique of Xander, because it's not, he obviously like pulls away sort of thing, but it's like, it's just one of those random sort of scenes that just feels a little bit out of place.
Well, what's interesting is there actually are a couple of scenes, like more than just that one. There are actually a few moments between Buffy and Xander in season 2 that kind of, when I was watching this time, made me go, maybe it's, I mean, I don't think that Buffy has feelings for Xander.
No.
But I also don't think that especially back then in the 90s, when it was very different, dynamics were very different, and we were taught very differently. I think being close friends with a male at that age, you may just have some moments where, you do have a little bit of romantic chemistry. It doesn't mean it's going to go anywhere, but it's there. Like, for example, at the end of Inca Mummy Girl, another not great episode. I think Inca Mummy Girl is another slightly weaker episode.
Definitely.
But at the end, when Xander and Buffy are talking about Empata and how she had to give up her life, Xander's like, well, you did it. And Buffy's like, well, I had you to bring me back. And they have a little moment there where they just kind of share a look. I know the moment you're talking about in phases. So I think it's more supposed to show, I mean, we're in our late 30s now, and we don't really remember what it's like to be a teenager. But I think at that age, you do have different feelings for different people. Sometimes you might have a little mild crush on this friend, but you might be dating this friend. So I think season 2 in particular definitely shows everyone navigating that. Because, you have Xander with his feelings for Buffy, but then he and Willow have a moment in the season opener, and then he's with Cordelia. Willow has a crush on Xander, but she's also with Oz. Buffy's dealing with the Angel stuff. So I think it is a realistic portrayal of what happens when you have a friendship group like that, and you are all teenagers, and you do all have hormones, and you all have these little underlying attractions to each other. So I think sometimes, maybe that's what they were trying to show.
When she was bad is interesting for that, because that's the first time it's implied that there might actually be a Xander Willow thing. Because that actually goes a little bit more into flirtation that you're expecting. But it does look like they're about to kiss before Buffy shows up. That's an interesting scene.
I feel so bad for Willow later on in the episode when she tries to recreate the moment in the bronze by putting ice cream on her nose, and Xander's just like, oh yeah, you got something on your face. And Willow and Oz, who start their relationship this season, and Xander and Cordy, and we get to see the two very different types of like teen relationships develop.
Xander's there for Buffy type scene, and obviously it's quite an emotional scene because of the girl being brought back, and it's by Angel, and so that's another good example of them keeping the Angelus thing alive, even though he's not in the episode that much. So the scene in general I quite like, but it's just the implied romance I just always felt a little bit false, but it might just be because I'd never really got the impression that there was anything on Buffy's side. I'd always got the impression it was more on Xander's side. But
I think it is 99. I don't think Buffy ever really considers Xander as a romantic option. And I think in that moment, she's just a bit vulnerable. She's a little bit vulnerable. She's remembering her ex. So maybe she just has a close moment with a male friend. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go any further than that. So I think it's just supposed to show sometimes we get confused, and especially Buffy dealing with what she's
sometimes dealing with. Actually for a show to do that is quite brave, because a lot of times if there is a scene like that and it's implied that there could be something, then they will try and turn it into something later on, maybe, rather than just moving on, and this is sort of their friends and that's it. It's Ted. I was wondering what you thought of Ted, what you think of John Ritter, one of the guest appearances of Buffy, maybe the biggest up to that point.
Ritter. And I think that John Ritter is great, and I think he does a great job as Ted. I think he's suitably menacing, and he does that kind of Stepford smiler, like, oh, look, I'm a good guy with my cookies and my mini pizzas, but there is something not right there. That being said, I don't think Ted is a very strong episode. I don't think the whole metaphor of, oh, my new step-parent is a monster is particularly subtle. I think that the show has definitely done better and more subtle metaphors. I think the reveal that Ted is a robot went into this weird science fiction area that Buffy doesn't really live in, and kind of stretches the willingness of disbelief. Like, how could Ted in the 50s design a robot that was so believable? I mean, we see the Buffy bot, and the Buffy bot is, so there's that. And I also think this is a very bad episode for Joyce. I actually love Joyce. I think that Joyce is a better mother than most people give her credit for, but Jesus Christ, does she suck ass in this episode.
I find her frustrating at times, where I think she is ragging on Buffy a bit too much, but I think she gets better later. I think sort of post finding out she's the Slayer. And there's definitely good moments. I actually like the scenes with them in school hard, and the way actually that pays off. And Joyce, where she says, I've got a daughter who can take care of herself in a crisis, and I'm going to sleep easier. I think that's a really good Joyce moment. But obviously in Ted it's a little bit murky, because they obviously play it as, well, she's being controlled by the
cookies, by the drugged cookies.
The drugged cookies, they must have had fun cooking up that pot. But it's just this weird sort of thing. Like, I find it, I don't find it relatable per se, because I didn't really go through it, but I think it obviously is relatable for a lot of people, where their parents are single and they meet a new guy, and so I like the episode a bit better than you. Latched on to, like, quite early when I was watching the show, and I think since I've watched other episodes, and like there's episodes I like more, but I think because it was one of the ones I watched quite early on. Sort of, I took to it, and it's quite a fun episode, but with a more emotional side. I actually like how authentic it feels when Buffy goes back to school the day after. Yes. There's some great acting there. I like the choice of the dungarees as there's like a more sort of like downtrodden type attire for her to. And that felt very authentic. She does a very good job in that scene of underplaying things, and you can just see in her face that she just doesn't want to face the world, and that's sort of very relatable. But like, there are problems in the episode, but like overall I do quite enjoy it. But I was going to ask you about the whole, for some people they're a bit uneasy with introducing sci-fi. Enjoy some of the B-movie antics of the thing, of the, like the scenes later on with him as a robot and him like malfunctioning. The stuff that I do get some enjoyment out of with that stuff.
So yes, Ted, not one of my favorite episodes, but not one of my least favorite episodes. Actually, we'd have to see.
I think you've already answered this question, but the middle part, which does divide some people, like some people think it chickens out a little bit by making it he's a robot, and like, then it should have just been that, and that's it, and she has to face the consequences. But then obviously that would have been a very dark sort of thing for her then to live.
I think it was too early to do a storyline like that where
Yeah.
Buffy kills a human. Like, obviously, and we'll talk about it when we get to season 3, but obviously in season 3 we have a little bit of a storyline like that with Buffy and Faith and the mayor's assistant. But I think doing that kind of episode in season 2, like you said, it would have been too dark, and they would have had to dedicate too many episodes to it, because that, if they'd done it, that's not something that you can just brush under the rug. You know, that's not something that can easily be like swept away. It would have had to be something that followed Buffy for the whole season, and the season already has enough going for it. So while I think the science fiction-y robot reveal, I don't particularly love the science fiction of it, I don't mind the fact that Ted was revealed to be something other than human, because I don't think the show was ready to tackle that sort of issue that early on. So for me, I don't think it was a cop-out.
Yeah, and I quite like the stuff with Xander, Cordy, Willow when they're investigating it. Xander and the cookie, and the moment it twigs that. Yeah. Because he suddenly has this change of heart, doesn't he, about Ted? You know.
Yeah. Plus, I do love Xander. His little dance when he's saying to Buffy, he's like, "You're having parental issues. You're having parental issues." What? Freud would have said the same thing, except he wouldn't have done that little dance.
Yeah.
Also, Willow makes a noise in this episode, which is one of the best noises I have ever heard. And I don't know how you could ever recreate it, when Ted is talking about how he can get her some sort of like really big Uber like computer thing, and she makes this like...
Oh, yeah, I know the one.
If you can snap a clip of it and do so, because every time I watch that episode, I'm like, how did Allison physically make that noise? It was brilliant. So I think Ted, for me, is a bit of a mediocre episode, but there are definitely more offensive episodes that are like really bad. So, you know, but I understand, like, when you watch an episode a lot, like in the early run of a show, that was kind of like me and when we were doing season 1, and Out of Mind, Out of Sight, you know, like maybe not the best episode, but I had such a soft spot for it because I had watched it so much. So that's my take on Ted. But I do love John Ritter, and I think John Ritter, rest in peace, was fantastic in that episode. And like I said, he really does the Stepford smile right. Like, you're just like, there's something not right with this guy. There's something off here. So
he actually makes for a good villain, and I think it's partly that thing of him. You're used to see him as more wholesome character, so he enjoys turning it around, and it sort of works well for the metaphor of the episode, because he also plays like a really sleazy character in Bride of Chucky, doesn't he, as well? And
oh my gosh, I'd forgotten about that.
That was quite late on, I think. Well, that's not long after, but he's in Buffy. But so he's effective in that as a bit of a scumbag.
Lie to Me. I think Lie to Me is actually quite a good episode, and I wanted to know what your opinions were on that one, and if you thought that it was a stronger episode or... Yeah, because that one gets spoken about a lot, Lie to Me, and with it's Billy Fordham and everything. Yeah. Do you like that episode?
I do like it. Yeah, I think at times it's probably a bit underrated, if anything.
I think so.
But that actually has a good, like, eerie Drew moment, doesn't it? At the very start of the episode where she's in the playground. Yeah, that's very good. And
I think that's when you really clue into, like, okay, even though she's weak, even though she's sick, she is still a menace. And you get that little hint there of Angel and Drusilla. You know, this is the first time that we get the reveal that, there's something going on here. And so I think that's a great thing. I think we also get some great Angel, Willow, and Xander scenes when they go to the vampire club. The vampire club is just brilliant.
That's good. That's a good, like, mythology type thing, isn't it? And makes a lot of sense. And just the whole look of it is just so industrial and everything. And it makes sense that in this type of world you would have these people that would like worship vampires and think that vampires were like so cool. And we meet a very important character, even though we don't know she's going to become important. Chantel / Lily / Anne. This is the first time we ever meet her. So I think that's great. There's also a moment I love in the club between Angel, Willow, and Xander, where Angel's like going on about how stupid everyone is, and he's all like, these people don't know anything about vampires, how they live, how they are, how they dress. And then that guy walks past Angel and he's wearing the exact same outfit. And they're just like, okay. Plus, you know, Angel visiting Willow
at night, and Xander being all like, Angel was in your room, and Willow's just like, ours is a forbidden love. I just think you get some great things.
That's good, yeah.
And I think Lie to Me really starts to delve into the themes of like Buffy overall, and Buffy's struggle with determining the morally grey areas in her life. You have that beautiful speech at the end from Giles, where, he's like, do you want me to tell you the truth? And she's like, lie to me. And, yes, it's all very simple. And I think it's a great episode. I love Ford and Spike because I think they're just fun when Ford comes to Spike and like.
Yeah,
Spike-
the way Ford monologues in that scene, it is almost like a character out of Scream a little bit.
I know.
Yeah. Like, you've got to say it once. Everyone gets to say it once.
He's just like, oh, for God's sake, fine. Yeah. You've got 5 minutes to convince me not to kill you. Like, Spike's just not having any of it.
And I also love, like, just Spike ragging on, like, is there anyone on security around here? Like, just anyone can walk in off the street. And doesn't he make a gag about him looking like a delivery guy or something?
Yes. He's like, oh, did we finally get someone who delivers? Oh, for God's sake. Can I eat him yet, love? And Drew's just like, no. But yeah, and I think Ford's quite an interesting character, and I would like to know how he found out Buffy's the Slayer. They never really explain that, but it's not a deal breaker for me. It's more just a little annoyance, kind of like, how did you find out? Huh? Anyone? Yeah. Oh, also, I don't like that Buffy says I love you to Angel in this episode. I think it's way too early, and I don't like the circumstances. I mean, I understand why that scene plays out the way it does. Like, when she asks Angel about Drusilla, Angel is about to pretty much admit to Buffy the worst thing he ever did as a vampire, and she's never really heard about like what he's done as a vampire. She just knows that he was evil. So I think him asking her, do you love me, is like, he needs that reassurance that after he tells her. But for me, it just didn't work. It was because I think the I love you would have worked better in surprise. When Angel says I love you to her and then they sleep together, I think it would have worked better if she dropped it then. I think dropping it and Lie to Me feels, a little too early. But again, I do understand where it's coming from. But overall, I think Lie to Me is like a little gem that's kind of buried in the weaker episodes of like early season 2.
Well, yeah, because it's also a darker episode than you would expect because of the whole cancer thing with Ford as well. That's an interesting detail, and I think that's a great example, like just showing why Buffy's such a credible hero, so like likable, because she does sort of draw that line where it's a great speech because she makes it clear, I'm sorry, I have sympathy for you, but that still doesn't mean what you're doing can be justified. And I think that just sums up Buffy's moral compass right there, really. I think she just sort of nails it. So,
and I like I like when she says to him, when he's like, I don't have a choice, and she's like, no, you do. You don't have a great choice, but you have a choice, because again, that whole thing of like choice and free will and choosing what you do, that really comes into play in season 3 with Faith, and I really like that callback, almost like Ford is like the precursor to that sort of thematic thing that they go with Faith in season 3. They even have the episode called Choices. Like, you might not always have the best choice, but you do always have the choice. And you should make the right choice. And Buffy demonstrates, like you said in this episode, that she is capable of making that choice and capable of being a hero. And it maybe just shows that maybe Ford is not evil. He's just weak. And there are weak people in the world who do things when they're desperate. And this is what I really love about Buffy as a series. And it goes into Angel as well. These, this examination of what makes us good, what makes us evil. It's not that we're inherently born good or evil. It's that we make the choice to be good or evil. We make the choice to do these things, and you see that as season 2 goes on, and I really like that in Lie to Me. So I feel like you have all these kind of lackluster episodes like Some Assembly Required and Reptile Boy, and you
don't love the giant penis monster. The big snake.
Oh dear, that's a great.
It has its moments, but it's not the best episode. Probably the opening might be the highlight. Them watching the Indian video. That's really cute.
But...
Yeah, no.
singing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think Lie to Me,
Lie to
yeah,
Me
it's a
is
great
good.
episode and really sets up what the later part of the season is going to end up being like. So I guess we can segue into talking about like from What's My Line. I think it's What's My Line parts 1 and 2 that really start to turn the season around. And then you've got
Yeah.
Surprise and Innocence, which
Yeah, and I like the way the stakes start to rise, you know, once you get to that middle part, and just so how well done everything is from like Surprise to Innocence. It's a really great double. I really like the dream sequence at the start of that episode.
oh, me too. It's
That's
beautiful.
such a great opening.
Mhm.
Willow and the French monkey is a highlight, and yeah, no, it's just a very well done episode where they do. But I think also just going back to What's My Line is, I think that sort of like leads into some big stuff in Surprise and Innocence because of Drew being out of commission. And
Yes.
this whole thing about Spike trying to get her back to full capacity. And it just sells what a threat Drew is, and it just adds stakes to that whole storyline. So, yeah, I'm guessing maybe it's at that point where they originally were considering killing Spike off, because
Possibly.
it just seems like there's a gap of a few episodes when they're not in it, and then they sort of come back, maybe. But
yeah. I
yeah.
do love that final shot in What's My Line. I mean, the effects are a little bit dodgy because it was 1997, but when you see Drusilla at full strength and she just picks Spike up and carries him out of the church, I think that's just such a great setup that Drusilla's now going to become the threat. And I do love that fun kind of parallel that originally she's the injured one with Spike taking care of her, and then in the second half he's the injured one with her taking care of him. And I love the restoration ritual that they have to kidnap Angel. The scenes where Drusilla is torturing Angel, those are great scenes, because again, it kind of shows how vampires get off on the whole sadomasochistic side of things, you know, and it shows how Drew is really getting off on the torture of Angel, but you can also see how Angel still has the ability to get under Spike's skin, you know, because he's kind of taunting him when he comes in. And I just think it really is starting to set up the dynamic of the three of them for when Angel turns evil. You can see the seeds kind of being sown in What's My Line Part 2. So I think that's really great.
I think I've heard some funny like on set stuff about that scene, you know, from Juliet Landau. She mentioned how I think they were tied up for hours and they'd forgotten that they were still there and left them behind or something.
Oh, no.
Which is pretty funny.
Oh dear.
You can imagine. That's good.
But yeah, I think What's My Line, like, really, because there's so much that happens in that episode, but then sets up the rest of the season. So like I said, you get the introduction to the Spike, Drew, Angelus dynamic. You have, like we said, you have Xander and Cordy and their first big kiss, which quite frankly is one of the best kisses in the whole show. I
love their relationship. I love the whole screwball like comedy nature of it, and the back and forth, and yeah, it's something I'm gonna champion this season. Is I do think Cordy's a really great girlfriend. Like there's really like
She's got so many
Killed
moments.
by Death. I think that's a really. I mean, that's her episode. I think she's the MVP of that episode for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the best lines.
Yeah, and I really like how season 3 it does. It shows Cordy slowly becoming more integrated with the Scoobies. And if you watch a lot of her scenes, you will see that a lot of her scenes, she is actually with Xander. She's often standing with him or talking with him, or he's rescuing her. So I think when they do eventually kiss, it feels kind of like, oh, yeah, of course. This makes absolute sense. And I'm pretty sure Joss said that that's how the relationship came about. Like, they were just writing these two characters, and one day they just went, oh, hang on. These guys like each other. We need to put them together. And so I think you get that. Plus you also get the proper first introduction of Willow and Oz, and they're adorable, you know, when they both get chosen to meet with the CIA creepy looking dudes. They're a little bit dodgy.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he takes a bullet for her, and then you have the gorgeous little animal crackers speech at the end, you know. And
I do actually like how in like the Surprise and Innocence, well, it's in Surprise in particular, how they actually don't make a big deal of him finding out about that. It's like actually it explains a lot, and it's almost like they weren't going to tell him, but then obviously they've got no choice. So
yeah.
That's actually a good way to do it. Yeah, that's quite nice.
Yeah. Oz gets some great reveals. I mean, he's so chill. I mean, when you think about phases, when he discovers that he's a werewolf, and it's like, is Geordie a werewolf? Huh. Very chill reactions to finding out pretty much everything, but
he's
that's
a
just
werewolf and finds out. Yeah. But yeah, actually going back to the surprise episode, there's quite a nice subversion in that with Jenny, where it actually makes it look like she's setting Buffy up, like for something, because it's at the stage of the episode where they've revealed that she's from the Gypsy family, and she's had the conversation with her uncle, I think it is, and but yeah, then it actually turns out to be she's setting her up for the surprise parties.
Yeah.
So that's really good. That's clever writing.
Yeah, and the reveal of Jenny being part of the Romani clan, I think, was a really good reveal. I think it really added a lot to her character and kind of, added this new dynamic to the group of like, oh my God, so Jenny's known this whole time. And I think Surprise is just such a great episode in general. Like you said, the dream sequence is great. I love the parallels drawn between Buffy and Drusilla, and the fact that Buffy keeps dreaming about Drusilla killing Angel, but she's killing Angel while she looks like Buffy. So it's like, that kind of almost setting up the fact that Buffy will metaphorically kill Angel. And I just think it's such a great setup. The fact that they both have their parties going on. It's really interesting because
it's something the show does really well.
Because a lot of people seem to forget, because Buffy has so many foils over the series. And I think obviously the bigger ones are characters like Faith, or even she gets compared a lot to Darla is in terms of her relationship with Angel. But people forget that there were a lot of parallels drawn between her and Drusilla in season 2, which is very, very interesting, especially around the whole Angel Angelus arc. And it's easy to forget that the show paralleled them so closely at one point. So I find that really interesting. And I think the Judge as a concept is maybe not the strongest villain, but the episodes aren't really about him. They're more about, what's happening. But I don't know, the Judge for me, he's just kind of the MacGuffin of the episode.
The Drusilla, do it again, when he like abbreviates. It's that Weasley looking like vampire.
Yes, Dalton, his name is.
Oh, I didn't even know he had a name, Dalton. Okay. Yeah, because he's in a few episodes. He's quite a cool little character.
Yeah, because I like in this episode, Buffy makes the comments like, every time I see you, you're trying to steal something. Because he is. And I also love when Drew's like threatening to like poke his eyes out.
That's good.
And she's crushed his glasses, and she just kind of picks him up, puts him back on his face, and she's like, okay, up you go. Like Juliet Landau is just so much fun.
She's really great.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have the climax, and oh my God, watching Innocence this time around, just the sympathy for Buffy, just oh my God, that
is so beautiful, so well done,
and so heartbreaking. Everything about Innocence is so heartbreaking for her. First of all, the fact that she wakes up alone, like that's got to be horrible, waking up alone after losing your virginity. Then that horrible run-in she has with Angel at his apartment when he's turned, but she doesn't know. And oh my God, my heart just breaks for her there.
Yeah, that's one of the worst scenes, like the worst you ever feel for her over the course of the show.
Yeah.
This is obviously one of the great set piece metaphors, like calling cards of the show, the big metaphor about how sometimes guys can change after sex, and in this case they're using the analogy of him being a vampire and turning into an evil. But
and then just to top everything off, she then finds out that not only is Angel gone and his evil side is back, then she finds out it was her, or at least the fact that she slept with him. So like all of this is just being piled onto this poor girl, and you just think no wonder she has so many issues with sex after this season, because if this is how your first time goes down, like,
that's very
oh
true.
God, the poor girl.
And you can understand why she's just, for a lot of the episode, she is shut down and she doesn't want to. Yeah, and they do obviously play that very well, where like she is very private about what happened.
Yes.
And how, even though she has built up a good rapport with Giles and a good relationship, how, because he is a man and, wouldn't understand in the same way, how she just can't talk to him about that stuff, and just how awkward it is.
Yeah.
And I do like how Willow picks up on it and kind of is sensitive to it. So
Willow is awesome in this season. We actually haven't talked much about her, but I'll just take a quick segue to say that I think I mentioned when we started that there were a couple of characters that I thought are really fantastic in this season. I think Willow really starts to come into her own this season. You see her start to stand up to people more. You see her take charge more. You see her being there for Buffy in a really, really strong friendship way. She's got some great episodes where she calls out people for like their behavior, like in Reptile Boy. She yells at Giles, for overtraining, and then she turns to Angel and it's like, you're going to live forever. You don't even have time for a cup of coffee. And I just think that, and then she's got another moment where she like screams at Cordy and Xander, and she's like, and if you two aren't going to help me, get the hell out of my library. And, I just think that...
her going into teacher mode is a really good side of her character.
Yeah.
Like how excited she is later in the season when she starts taking his class. And
of course, Willow has her own little heartbreak in this episode in Surprise and Innocence when she finds Xander and Cordelia kissing. And that's the moment where...
Well, let's talk about that, because I think for me, I love Willow. She is my favourite character of the show, of the Buffyverse, probably. And I agree that she is fantastic in this season. A lot of good comedy, a lot of good character growth for her. But for me, that's one where I'm not really on her side, because I don't think she has a right to be mad at Xander, considering like her and Xander aren't a thing, and how she had the opportunity to ask Xander out and didn't take it, which obviously I understand isn't always easy and you don't want to ruin the friendship. But I think once that moment has passed and you haven't asked him out, I don't think you have the right to be mad at him for going out with someone else. So
I mean, I get what you're saying, but I feel so bad for Willow in that instance. Because I think there's this one line that she has that I think really sums up how she's feeling. And that's when she says, when Xander's all like, it was just a kiss, it doesn't mean anything. She says, no, it just means you would rather be with someone you hate than be with me. And I think it's that feeling of, because I think the reason that Willow's never really made a move on Xander, I mean, aside from the fact that she's incredibly shy, is because he's never, ever given her any indication that he sees her that way. He's always made it really clear that she is just a friend to him. So now she's seen that, is he going to look at every girl in the world before he looks at me? Is he going to look at someone who has tortured both of us since we were in kindergarten before he looks at me? So while I don't think she has a right, so to speak, to be mad at Xander, I definitely understand her heartbreak in that episode of finding out that this guy that she's liked for so long has literally chosen their enemy over her. And, she ends up realizing that it's all right, that these things happen, that you can't control who you fall for. But I think it's a very realistic and very, for me, sympathetic example.
Yeah, I can see how it's realistic. Yeah.
And what I do like is, again, this episode really shows how amazing Oz is. I really like the scene where she asks Oz, do you want to make out with me?
Yeah, that's a great scene.
And, he's like, sometimes I think about kissing you and everything stops. It's like freeze frame, Willow kisses. And she's like, and he's just like, oh, no, I'm not going to kiss you now. And she's like, what? But freeze frame. And I really love how he's like, look, I don't want to settle the score. I don't want you to use me to get back at Xander. And I just thought that's such a great scene. And I love that you see Willow just looking at him like, wow, this guy really is.
Yeah, that's a beautiful scene. And it sort of shows that he isn't just a typical shallow guy.
Exactly.
If he was, he just would have taken the chance and got the kiss. And you know, so it shows he actually wants to do it in the right way, and he actually cares about her. So that's a really great typical Oz sort of scene and line. And I love the whole stuff at the army base and the Zandercordy stuff, the Nonian line, you know.
Oh, I love that.
That's one of the best lines.
Make you want to have sex?
Yeah.
I'm 17. Looking at linoleum makes me want to have sex. And I like also the reveal, because we didn't really know it before this episode, but I like the reveal that Xander has retained all of the military knowledge.
I think I might have mentioned it from I think on the Halloween video, because of course it came up as one of your picks. So that is a really good detail. And we should actually just say, circling back a little bit, how you do start to get more like really good guest villains, and I think Ethan Rayne's a good example of that, where he obviously gets a few episodes and he's just fantastic. And I also loved the stuff with him and Giles and how they get into the past, the whole Ripper stuff. And it sort of lets like Anthony Stewart Head flex his muscles a bit more as well, where he actually gets to play a more darker, sinister side.
Yeah, so. Plus he's like really hot when he's Ripper, so
he really is, yeah.
Yeah, he is. He gets really sexy when he goes into Ripper mode. But yeah, there's just Ethan Rayne, great character. Obviously, we've talked about Halloween previously, and the Dark Age. Well, again, I don't think the Dark Age is the strongest.
That's a weaker
episode.
One, but it's actually quite a big episode when it comes to mythology.
Yes. Yeah. And again, it's another episode where Willow proves that like she's really to take control, because it's her idea in the end to get the demon to jump into Angel's body. She's the one that realizes, hey, Angel's already got a demon inside of him. Let's get the two demons fighting. So again, it's another example of like Willow coming into her own and showing the smarts and showing the leadership qualities that she'll start to take on as the series go on. So another great episode for her. But I think the Surprise and Innocence arc, those two episodes are just so good, like just so good together, so good as a two-parter, so much emotion. We also get a great set piece at the end with the mall. I really like, you know, the big
good
explosion
action.
And the almost slow motion kind of Die Hard diving away.
It's
from
very
the
well done.
Judge.
And I actually love them like picking up pieces of him later on, because obviously they don't want him to like reassemble.
That's sort of Oz just being like arm. And I also love the scene between Buffy and Angel where she fights him and he's all like, you know, you're not ready, you can't do it yet. So she just kicks him in the nuts. I think that's a good response to have. I'm on board with that.
Masculinity until she can do more,
Exactly. And then I really, really love that scene with Buffy and Giles when he drops her off. That is one of their, I mean, they get some great scenes this season as well, Buffy and Giles. You really start to see that father-daughter bond start to grow. But that beautiful scene where she says, you know, you must be so disappointed in me. And he's like, no, not at all. And he's like, you know, you loved him. He loved you. Did you act rashly? Yes. But I'm not here to, you know, to yell at you. I just think it's such a beautiful scene.
That he is being truthful with her, but he's very good at putting things in perspective like that. Very good at being that father figure where he understands she's still a very young girl. She's still finding her way in the world. And that's such an extreme circumstance that you could never really prepare for or never really expect. You know, she obviously had no idea. I mean, once you know, you're going to be more careful in the future. But you know, obviously you can't blame her in any way. And then actually the scene after that with Joyce, I love. I think it's a great way to end the episode.
It is, isn't it? It's such a beautiful, quiet
watching
moment.
That like old movie on, beautiful, quiet. It's so subtle and let it burn, and it's a great example of Joyce just being there as a mother. You know, it's almost that thing of, you don't actually have to say anything. We can just sit here.
Exactly. And I'm just going to go off on a little tangent quickly, but like
Really well
any
done.
fans that ever that ever say that, like, a lot of fans do not like Joyce, and a lot of fans really try to downplay Joyce's impact on Buffy. And I think this final scene really shows why Buffy needs her mother. You know, like, she has to go out and deal with all of this supernatural stuff. She has to deal with all of this stuff. So she has a safe space to come home to. At the end of the day, she can come home, sit with her mum, watch an old movie, and eat a cupcake. And I think that if you really want to see why Buffy needs Joyce, just look at what happens to her after season 5 when Joyce is gone. She's never the same without her mother. And we'll talk about that more as we go through the series. So yes, Joyce being a safe space for Buffy. I love that scene at the end. I think it just really emphasizes that.
Jenny, and about her past, and about because it's a good reveal, and I think they do some great stuff with it. Now, the whole Angelus thing, I think if you pick it apart too much, it maybe doesn't work, because there's been a lot of gags about how it could just be anything in a way. It could be any random thing, and it could just be set off so easily in a way. But it's obviously a good introduction to it. It's a good development to his character, which opens up a lot of possibilities for the future. It sort of opens up like almost a Jekyll and Hyde style thing. And obviously, it does really change the game for the Buffyverse, him becoming such an effective villain in this season. But I wanted to ask you where you stand on the whole Jenny thing, because for a while after this episode, once it's revealed that she knew, she is sort of shunned by like the Scoobies and Giles. And obviously this divides people. I personally have quite a lot of sympathy for Jenny, because I think she was put in a bad position. Like, family loyalty split with, obviously, this new, she has genuine feelings for Giles, and she has bonded with the Scoobies as well. So I think she is put in a very difficult place, and I do, although I can understand their feelings towards her, it is a bit hard to watch at times, because I think actually, it wasn't really her fault. She was put in a very bad situation.
Yeah. I tend to come down on Jenny's side. I feel a lot of sympathy for her too. So I think because it is made clear that her tribe, they didn't tell her the exact specifics. They just said, go and watch Angel and make sure that nothing happens. But they didn't actually tell her until after Buffy and Angel slept together that would cause him to lose his soul. So she literally did not know. So I think that Buffy's initial reaction is fine. I think it's understandable. The dream she has, she obviously doesn't know what it means. It's a miracle she did not get kicked out of school for assaulting a teacher. I mean, I'm guessing Giles, made it so that Snyder didn't hear about that. But I do think that them shunning her after for so long is a bit harsh.
I think that's a bit harsh. Yeah.
I think it's a bit harsh, but I also kind of understand, because Buffy has so much guilt regarding what happened with Angel. Like, she genuinely believes that it is all her fault. So I do think that part of it is her pushing that guilt onto Jenny and trying to alleviate herself of some of the guilt and the hate. But I do think they are too harsh. But again, what I do love that this whole thing kind of demonstrates is how much Giles cares about Buffy, because I think it's beautiful but also heartbreaking that he turns his back on Jenny to be on Buffy's side, to show Buffy, I am in your corner no matter what. Even though I have feelings for this woman, I will be on your side until you decide it's okay not to be. But I do think they are too harsh on her, especially watching it this time. I was like, you guys aren't really looking at things from her point of view, and you're really not taking into account, I mean, this Romani tribe, they're intense, man. I mean, the fact that they cursed Angel this way in the first place is intense. I mean, the fact that 100 years later, they're still so intent on getting their revenge. I mean, how do you fight that? It's like she said, she was raised by the people that Angelus hurt the most. She was raised to believe in this vengeance. How do you I mean, she didn't know what was going to happen. So yeah, I'm more on Jenny's side. I do feel a lot of sympathy for her. So while I understand Buffy's point of view, I think maybe a little understanding, maybe a little forgiveness could have benefited them a bit. And yeah, I do think they are quite harsh with her. And I mean, especially when you consider the way that Angel murders her uncle, and no one really shows her much sympathy after that. Like it's more seen as like a strike against Buffy. So yeah, I do think they are a bit harsh towards Jenny.
Yeah, and they obviously do some interesting stuff with that towards the end of the season, and obviously in Becoming the subject comes up again, and how can, but yeah, they do obviously do a good job once Jenny has passed away of selling the stakes of that. Because I actually like the stuff with Giles in I Only Have Eyes for You when he thinks it could. That's really
I know.
powerful.
Yeah. Might be a good time to segue into Passion and talk about Angelus and him as a threat. Obviously we've talked a bit about how this gave David the opportunity to really like kind of flex his acting muscles and show how, like, I forget how menacing Angelus is in season 2 of Buffy, because I usually watch Angel and he's not as menacing when you see him in Angel, but in season 2 of Buffy he is terrifying. And I think that he is just so scary. And Passion, I think, is such a great episode.
Yeah,
and
I
just
really like Passion.
It is one of the standout episodes, possibly off the series. The voiceover, which I don't always like voiceovers, but I think the voiceover from Angelus actually works really well. I think the score is really good. And I love that.
Yeah, him
feeling.
and that scene in the Bronze is very sinister, isn't it? Where
Yes.
it's just him sort of stalking them from a distance and
Yep.
lurking in the shadows.
Look, and I think that there's this constant feeling in this episode of him watching them, and I love that. It's like you said, this season does a very good job of showing that he's always there. The threat's always there, even if he's not the main part of the episode, he's always lurking. And I think that Passion really emphasizes that way, that he is really honing in on the Scoobies and in on Buffy, and really gets that down.
And I think like that sort of episode is an example of why he's such an effective villain, because they do really push it to the extreme where he is like pure evil. He is almost like the complete opposite of Angel. So
yes.
And yeah, that was always going to be the only way they could have done it, with him being such an effective villain, and then the emotional stress than that puts on Buffy. But yeah, just little touches, like just him actually getting off on seeing their reaction, when they find out the news about Jenny. That is just so,
he's horrifying. And oh my god, Giles, what he does to Giles in this episode. In like post season 2, there are some fans in the Angel community who think that Giles is too hard with Angel, and I'm just like, no man, no. Giles can hate Angel until his dying day, because I think obviously the most damage is done to Buffy because of the emotional impact of her boyfriend. He wears her boyfriend's face, but I think Angelus actually does more to Giles than he does to any of the other Scoobies. And I mean, that scene where Giles comes home and there's the rose on the front door and the opera's playing and the candle.
Yeah, that is so pure evil, so twisted, isn't it? Just
twisted.
The knife in and just making him think it's her, and
I know, and
yeah, it's devastating to watch.
It is. Because you have that dread, you know what Giles is walking into, and you have that beautiful scene earlier in the season, in the episode, where they'd had a moment, Giles and Jenny, and she admitted that she was in love with him, and he said, "Yeah, you can come by my house," and then. Oh my God, I think that scene of Jenny in the bed and the candles and the roses, I think more than anything else, that just really shows how fucking evil Angelus is, like this dude, there's a reason he was like the scourge.
There's a
of Europe.
level of evil, yeah. It's not just enough to kill people and
Mm-hmm.
cause that sort of stress and upheaval. He actually has to draw it out and play with them, which is just next level in a way.
He is just a pure psychopath. And I don't know, because you watched Buffy later, didn't you? You didn't watch it when it was really airing. But I remember, like, I didn't watch season 2, but I was watching the series as it was going on, and this was a big thing. Like, you didn't kill characters like this on TV, not back then, not in the 90s. And so a character being killed like Jenny and being killed by another character like Angel, and then the scene itself is so terrifying. Like, I was watching the scene where he turns up in her classroom, and she's trying to edge towards the door, and it's so full of tension, and you just know that
it is
Jenny's
very much like a horror scene, and
it is.
But I think you're
really
right.
is.
Yeah, it raises the stakes, and it's a brave thing for them to have done. It sort of shows again that they're not afraid to kill off who you assume is going to be quite a long-running character, and then obviously naturally because we are invested in her and Giles, then you really feel so bad for him. The stakes of it and I think you touched on an important point about the lasting impact, because at the end of the day, once Angelus has done this, there's sort of no going back from it. Even though later on he turns good again, he's Angel, the effects are lasting because she's then gone. The evil side of him has done this, and I think that's what's just so devastating and powerful, and why you can understand some of Giles' feelings towards him when he shows back up next season out into the school, because he mentions that sort of Greek like Latin line or something to do with that all who
enter all ye who seek knowledge.
Yeah, that's an interesting little.
Yeah, but it's also kind of a continuity error. We've seen Angel in the school many times before, and the school's a public place, and they pretty much end up saying later on that vampires can enter public places. So I don't know if they put that in there to just be a little bit more menacing, or because they've forgotten their own continuity, but we've seen Angel in the school before.
Seen him in the school, so she,
exactly.
He can. Yeah, it might just be a continuity.
I think it's just a continuity error. But yeah, that whole scene's brilliant. I think David is so menacing, and I think the neck snap and that shot of the neck snap is so impactful.
Yeah, okay, she's gonna get away. She's gonna survive this, and then it's just that gut punch of. It's actually really well shot, because you see her go one way and then she comes back, and I mean, I don't know if he's teleporting or because somehow he ends up back in the right place, but it works for what they're going for anyway. It's a great sort of gut punch where you think she's gotten away, and then unfortunately no, he's there and kills her.
So I remember Alison Hannigan has spoke about season 2, and apparently they were told that someone was going to die. So they were told that, yes, Angelus is going to kill someone in the Scooby Gang. And at one point in time, there was a possibility that he was going to kill Oz, but Oz wasn't developed enough at that point. So they realized that it would be more of an impact. And then, of course, we need to talk about, because this will obviously lead towards the barreling towards the end of the season, the irony that Jenny was working on the restoration spell, and that she had actually, because they give you that hope spot, like, oh my God, she's going to bring Angel's soul back. We're going to get Angel back. And then, because this is the most 90s of 90s TV shows, the secret to Angel's soul is on a yellow floppy disk.
Beautiful.
Isn't that just beautiful? So good.
I do actually. I do have a funny little just to bring a lighter touch to Passion. But one of the sort of funnier things about it is this idea of what a great drawer Angelus is, because he seems to always do these perfect portraits of people's faces. So maybe always hundreds of years on the earth, he's actually developed. He did like classes back in.
Yeah.
Maybe we can retcon it like that. You know, he's had plenty of time to learn this stuff, so maybe that's how he does it. But
I have to say, they do put some fun into this episode. There are some funny scenes. There are some darkly funny scenes. I absolutely love Angelus waiting for Joyce. And then when she spills the oranges and he starts picking up the oranges and he like throws one like past her and he's like being really clumsy and stuff. Also Drusilla with the puppy. When she brings the puppy for Spike and she's trying to like, Miss Sunshine.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. He's like, and I've named her Sunshine. And she's like, open up for mummy. And Spike's like, nah, I'm not dealing with you. So you do have, like, obviously Buffy is very good at this, balancing the humor and the sadness, but Passion is just such a gut punch. But it has another great Giles and Buffy scene. One of my favorite Giles and Buffy scenes, after Giles goes to try and get revenge on Angel. First, you've got that great moment for Angelus when Buffy's beating him up and he's like, what, are you just going to let your old man burn? And then she looks down and she sees Giles on the ground. And then I just love as she's dragging him out of the warehouse and he pushes her and he's like, why did you come here? This wasn't your fight. And she's like, do you think I could do this without you? And you just have that beautiful, just such a gut punch, but so beautiful. And again, emphasizes that father-daughter bond between them. And then that beautiful theme, Jenny's theme, which apparently Ed Sheeran sampled in one of his songs. I'll have to find that.
That's very random.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, that's something else I was going to comment is the step up of music in this season, and just Christoph Beck coming on board as a composer, and just characters having their own themes that you associate with them is very. It's a nice touch. It adds just a little bit more personality. Remembering
Jenny, it's called. I love it. But my favorite theme from season 2, and I don't care if you're a Bangel shipper or not, you can't not love Close Your Eyes, which is just
it's great. It's brilliant.
Beautiful.
It's so
absolutely beautiful. So yeah, the score in this season definitely, it's fantastic, and so many great music moments and just moments where that underlying score just helps to elevate the scene. So Passion, just such a big turning point.
Thing in her final act sort of thing. I mean, in many ways we disagree that in some ways she doesn't need to redeem herself anyway, even though what happened was unfortunate. But it's like that's obviously what they're going for, is that is sort of a redemptive sort of thing in her death. And that's really good continuity. Then they bring that back because you sort of feel it is sort of gone and it's a bit of a missed opportunity, but the fact that the good old 90s floppy disk is still kicking about. I think they should fire the cleaners at Sunnydale High, because that disc was there for quite a while. They're getting a bit sloppy on the
they're sleeping
cleaner.
On the job, man. Definitely sleeping on the job.
But that's
great episode. I was just going to say, before we barrel towards Becoming, because obviously there's going to be a whole big discussion about the end of this season, there are just 3 episodes I wanted to ask your opinion on, because they're 3 that I find quite underrated gems from this season that I really love. So the first one is Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered. What's your opinion on that episode?
I love it. I think it's a perfect episode. It's one of those rare ones where I wouldn't change anything about it. It's just so funny and entertaining, the conceit of it and how far they go with the premise. There's some good like drama in it as well, but just such gems, the girls, the way they act around. So I think Jenny acting all flirty with him is
Jenny's hilarious.
She's so funny. She just gets so dominating and really puts it out there than he wants to be with a more mature older woman sort of thing. Yeah, just the way it piles off, and just some great Cordy and Xander moments.
Absolutely.
It's just a perfectly written episode. I wouldn't change anything about it. I even like the way they incorporate the villains into it, and
Yes.
the way
Oh,
it's
I
almost
love
like
Drusilla.
yeah, it's almost like their version of Valentine's Day is the opposite to like humans, which I
Love it.
absolutely love. And yeah, just the fact that they're worked into it, but it just doesn't actually break the story. It just sort of adds to it very nicely, and it's a fantastic Cordy moment at the end. You know, her standing up to Harmony. That is so good. It's like, yeah, I'll date whoever
hell I want to date, no matter how lame he is. You see Xander's like, oh, okay.
There's a compliment in there somewhere.
Yeah. No, because I love Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered. It's been one of my favorite season 2 episodes for years and years. I think the fandom's a bit harsh on Xander when it comes to this episode, because I think this episode, like, it's such an important step for Cordy and Xander and their relationship. And you just think this poor guy, you know, he's gone out, he's bought this present, he wants to try and, like, go steady, and she gets dumped on Valentine's Day right after giving Cordy this big epic speech. But then the episode is so brilliant because it also makes you feel bad for Cordy, because there is this moment that I absolutely love when Xander asks her for the necklace back. And it's revealed that she's wearing it. And I just think that is so beautiful. It just shows that, you know, even though she's broken up with him because it's high school and we all care about, you know, who we're with in high school and stuff like that, she does genuinely like him. And yeah, all the girls and their reactions to Xander, although I do feel sorry for Xander in the moment when Buffy starts to hit on him before he realizes the spell, because he thinks it's genuine and he's like actually getting excited, and then the realization that, oh no, it's just the spell. Also, Joyce hitting on Xander is hilarious. Plus, you get another great line from Cordy when she's all like, "And keep your mum-aged mitts off my boyfriend." Former, and then of
that's
course,
very good.
And then of course Drusilla and her whole, "How do you feel about eternal life?" And Xander's just like, "Couldn't we just start with a coffee, please?" Okay, cool. So Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered.
Very good.
Yes.
And every time, you know, when the spells first were, and he's walking down the hall, and that's so funny. The first time,
so
that
good.
kills me every time. Because also Jen in that is, I really enjoy, you know, how tough Giles gets at some point when he's like, if you really care about him, you'll help me and stop whittering about your feelings.
And he's like,
he's
now,
so
Jenny,
like harsh about
Jenny? Because Jenny's run off at that point. Oh, also, I love Oz coming in and just punching Xander in the face and then being like, "I was on the phone all night with Willow. I don't know what you did, but it left me with a very big urge to hit you." And then,
that's very good as well.
So a little bit of, I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but a little bit of trivia for that one is they turned Buffy into a rat so that Sarah would be free to go and host Saturday Night Live that week. So that's why Buffy's a rat. So yeah, and of course we see Amy's rat spell for the first time, which we will not see for the last time. Great Xander-centric episode where, you know, he does something stupid like Xander does, and he pays for it. Like Xander does, you know. I think he definitely learned his lesson by the end of that episode. It is by death, and I Only Have Eyes for You. And I love both these episodes because I think they're both like really fun, almost like little callbacks to season 1 with the Monster of the Week. But I think that the Monsters of the Week work really well, at least in this season. And Der Kinderstod from Killed by Death is one of the creepiest fuckers ever. Those eyes, man.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a good example where the fact that it happens to be a knockoff and sort of taken from Nightmare, it actually doesn't matter, right? You know, I don't mind shows doing that from time to time and just using it as like an influence, but you're sort of doing your own thing. And Yeah, I would say that's an underrated episode. Like, I don't think it's amazing. It has its faults, but I actually
but
think it deserves more love than it gets.
I agree. Yes.
Obviously, like we said, Cordy steals the episode. That whole, Tat is just saying saying true stuff. I'll pass.
Yep.
One of her greatest ever lines, and she's
Love
just
that.
great throughout the. I like when she gets foisted off on Giles and like his research.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, why do I have to work with her?" And then he pulls like, "It's follow me, Tat guy." and I like the bit later when they're talking to Buffy on the phone, and she's like, got the book with all the
Where's
monsters.
Giles?
Yeah, and she keeps making the ooh noises. And,
yes.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Because there's actually a funny bit, isn't there, in the scene before where she keeps asking Giles what all these demons are.
Yes. What is this when you ask annoying questions and it drives me crazy? And she's like, wow,
there's
I have a demon for everything.
Yeah.
Plus, she's so sweet. She brings Xander Krispy Kreme donuts. And apparently there's not that many Krispy Kreme donut places in California. So the girl probably went a very far way to get Xander his breakfast.
Yeah, and her flirting with Rogaine Boy, as Xander calls him, is pretty funny as well.
And I like Xander's jealousy as well, because it shows that it cuts both ways. And like you said, and Jealous's little appearance at the hospital in this episode is suitably menacing. And I like Xander's little face off with him. I especially particularly like when Xander's like, "You're gonna die and I'm gonna be there." Because I think Xander and Angel, it's a complicated dynamic, and it's a complicated, like obviously in seasons 1 and 2, Xander had jealousy towards Angel, but as you said, Angel's their friend, except he doesn't like him. So he tolerated Angel because he really could see that he was a good vampire. But I think once Angel lost his soul to Xander, that meant he's gone. Like, you need to kill him. And then everything that Angel did in season 2 obviously adds to Xander's hatred. So I think post Angelus, Xander's hatred is maybe not as mixed up with jealousy as it used to be. And and you see like episodes like this where Angelus comes and he's taunting them and he's threatening them. Like, you can understand why Xander ends up with a hatred for him.
Yeah, and I think in the scene Xander's very brave as well, because he can't say for sure that Angelus isn't going to go after him. So I quite like that he points out, maybe I can't stop you, maybe those security guards can't stop you, but I'm game to find out, basically.
Exactly.
I actually like, on the very basic level, it exploring the theme of Buffy actually getting ill, like a regular person, and that she has to go to the hospital. And, just looking at the idea of a Slayer not being at 100% just through like regular natural like illness. And I even don't mind, the sort of retcon of her past with her cousin who died. Some people that bothers them because it feels like a bit too much. I don't mind that because there's nothing really to say than that couldn't have been a thing in her past. It's just that they haven't got round to sort of bringing it up. And I think in the episode, like, it's a decent enough reveal.
I think so. Yeah. And it's cute that Buffy used to play being a superhero when she was a kid, I think that's really cute. So yeah, I think Killed by Death, it's definitely got its weaker parts. The pacing's a little off, I find. But I think it's a bit of an underrated episode.
I think it's a pretty decent episode.
And I really do like Der Kinderstadt is like, he's a creepy mofo, man. Like, dude, just no. So that one I think is underrated. And I also love I Only Have Eyes for You. That's another episode for me that I don't think is fantastic. Like, I wouldn't put it up there with Passion or Becoming or anything. But I do think it's a fun episode. I like the ghost storyline. It's got some really nice editing. And I like that it gives Buffy a little bit of closure from the fallout from her sleeping with Angel, I like how she identifies with James's ghost and how through James and Grace she gets reassurance that Angel loved her until he died. the student-teacher relationship, watching it this time around, I'm like, okay, this is creepy. Can we please get rid of this kind of dynamic? And I understand that they were going for like a forbidden romance, but like there's a difference between an educator and a student and a vampire and a slayer. Like it doesn't quite match up.
I mean, I never really thought about that before. It works quite well for me, but okay.
Yeah.
I can see what you mean.
But overall, I find the episode quite good, and I really love the final ghost possession with Buffy and Angel playing the ghosts as a gender swap.
That's a really dramatic scene.
Yeah, and this was actually the episode that convinced Joss 100% that David could carry his own show, because he said that. Yeah, because David was playing the female character, and he said he did it with enough subtlety that you bought it, but didn't overdo it. And so without this episode, we might not have had Angel the series. So that's another reason I have a little bit of a soft spot for it. I also like seeing the Scoobies work together again, trying to do the exorcism. We have a little poltergeist shout out with Cordy's face, changing in the mirror.
That's true.
Like you said, the Giles and Jenny, like little hints, like Willow giving him the rose quartz, and then his desperate belief that it's Jenny haunting the school is really sad. But also a really nice bit of continuity showing that Giles is still grieving her.
Yeah, because one of the things I was going to say about the episode is it's actually a good example of how you do a good Monster of the Week episode.
Yes.
Where it works as a good standalone Monster of the Week, but it also adds to the characters, it adds to the mythology. So I feel like with obviously the Jenny Giles stuff, I feel that with what it does with Angelus and Buffy. Once again, it's a good example of just how evil he is. The fact that he's so disgusted afterwards when he comes and he wants to wash the humanity off him. That is such a good detail. But yeah, I think it's a good example of how you actually do a Monster of the Week style. Whereas some of the earlier ones in the season do feel like disconnected, their own thing, and some of them are better than others, but they are a bit weaker because of that. Whereas this gets a good mix where it's got a good sort of Monster of the Week gimmick to it, but it's also adding to the character stuff. And another good line I like is actually, the Locker Monster, Loch Ness Monster line, where, Giles gets all excited because he thinks Xander says, I think it says like Loch Ness.
Yeah, he does. Loch Ness Monster?
It's
Locker Monster. Real in this episode, we get absolute confirmation that Snyder knows what's going on. This is the episode where he actually says, when are you people going to realize we're on a hellmouth? And then the other guy's like, oh yeah, well, if you have a problem, why don't you take it up with the mayor?
That's the first
time that we get that. So I like that little bit of like almost X-Files conspiracy theory, like, oh, the town higher ups know. They know for sure what's going on. And you find out
that is good, because I think sometimes in these shows, when it goes on for so long and you get all these different things cropping up, that I think sometimes it's in danger of stretching credibility, that these people wouldn't know anything. So and it just adds another layer to him as a villain, Snyder, the fact that he actually knows more, that it's not just that he's an arsehole, it's that he's in this knee deep in a way, and he keeps coming up with reasons. Like it's like the drug related one that
it's the PCP gang related, and this was
same thing happened in Cleveland.
Yes, Cleveland last week. So it's really good. Oh, that's good. I'm glad that we agree on that, because I've always had a soft spot for I Only Have Eyes for You. It's always been one of my underrated gems of season 2. So I think it's just a really fun episode.
Well, okay, so before we sort of get onto the finale, I want to just make a comment about that, how you get a weird placement of episodes at this point before the finale, where, to me, I Only Have Eyes for You seems like the perfect episode to go before Becoming. Yeah. It would have fit perfectly, and instead we get the really naff
Go Fish.
Yeah, which feels more of it should have been earlier in the season.
absolutely.
But it certainly
Yeah.
doesn't feel like the one that you put before the big finale. It feels like I Only Have Eyes for You.
No,
would
I
have fit much
agree.
better.
Yeah, Go Fish is not a great episode.
Yeah, I don't want to talk
I
about
don't like. Although, can we just talk about
Stupid.
one part? There is one scene I absolutely love, and that is the oh my, that girl is my kind of Xander. I'm
Yeah.
undercover. You're not under much. I just love that scene. I
Well,
just
yeah,
love
as always,
Buffy,
there's going
Willow,
to be good.
and Cordy are all kind of perving on Xander, like, oh, hello. And Cordy gets another great moment in Go Fish when she thinks that Xander has turned into one of the fish monsters, and she's all like, oh, we can still date or not. I mean, I understand if you want to see other fish. So,
But that's also, I think that's also a rare episode where Angelus doesn't really need to be in it, and like it's one scene in that episode actually doesn't feel like it's justified.
No, it really doesn't. So yeah.
And by the way, can I just ask a question? Because Wentworth Miller, who now is a bit more, he's terrible in the episode. Does his acting get any better in Prison Break? I wonder.
I don't know. I haven't seen.
That's the show he's big for. So I don't know if he got much better later on.
In The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow, and he is much better in those. But yes, he's truly terrible in this. And also, Buffy is terrible at Undercover. She's truly terrible at Undercover. She just the way she's like trying to. Nope. Not staring at you. It's like, come on, Buffy, be better. But no, Go Fish, it's such a weird episode. And like you said, the placing is so weird especially because Becoming is such like just an insane ride of a finale. To have that weird kind of filler episode right before it, it's almost like if you binge the whole season, it's like it upsets the flow of the season and the flow of the story to just have this weird little filler episode before we get this fantastic finale.
It makes me wonder because obviously sometimes episodes get aired out of order from how they were filmed, and it just makes me wonder if originally it was supposed to be somewhere else in the season, and for whatever reason.
I always count it as one episode. I know it technically is Becoming Part 1 and Becoming Part 2, but because it's such a cohesive episode and because it just flows so well, for me it's just one big episode. This is one of my favorite season finales of Buffy. It was my favorite for the longest time. And like I said, this was the very first episode of Buffy I ever saw was Becoming. So this was a great way to get introduced to the Buffyverse, because you just have everything you want in this episode. You know, you get a great payoff to the entire Angel arc. We get to see Buffy be awesome. We get to see Willow be awesome. We get some great stakes with Drusilla in the library, and when they take everything about this episode is so good. Big moment speech. That's one of my favorite moments. The slow motion running of Buffy, the music, the voiceover of Whistler, everything is perfect. But I was going to say, you mentioned the end of I Only Have Eyes for You and how Angelus has to like scrub the love and the humanity out of him. I have seen a fan theory that said that the reason that Angelus decided to end the world was because he was so disgusted with the possession of love and humanity that he went, no, screw this, I'm going to end the world, which is not a bad theory, because when you think about it, Angelus doesn't really seem like the end the world type, you know? It's funny, isn't it, thinking about, because obviously this is the episode where Buffy and Spike team up, and because Spike actually tries to convince her that he actually quite likes being in the world. He wants, lots of appealing things. Manchester United, apparently, we find out that series supports. That's so random, but that comes out of nowhere. He's listing these things, and then he's Manchester United. But that's obviously quite an interesting detail, maybe an alternative worldview that Spike actually, he wants to stick around. He wants to cause more chaos in the world, whereas Angelus maybe is just so sick of the whole thing. Yeah. He wants out of it, sort of thing. I love the flashbacks in this episode. I think they're great. You know, we get to seeing Buffy called, seeing Angel get cursed is a great scene. And I think the flashbacks just work really well to emphasize where these characters are. Yeah, in this in the story. I love seeing young Buffy get called, and you know her helplessness with like when she's at the graveyard, she's like, what do I do? Oh
Yeah,
god. And yeah, it's a nice little callback almost to the film. And then
it
I
is.
love I love the moment where you see Angel connect with her when she's in her house and she's crying, and you can just see how he's connecting with like the loneliness
That's a
that
good
she's
scene.
experiencing, you know, because they're two people who can't really walk in either world, you know. They don't belong in the human world, they don't quite belong in the supernatural world, they're in this in-between state. And I think that flashback really emphasizes that. I want to ask you, what do you think of Whistler?
I like him. As a one shot, I think he's decent
Yes.
enough.
Mm.
I like that actor. I've seen that actor in other things.
Gilmore
He's a
Girls.
freak.
He's
He's in
great.
Gilmore, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've seen him in at least one other thing. So, but
Mm.
no, he's good. Obviously, it's the sort of role that Doyle would go on to play in Angel that
Yes.
gets mentioned
Yeah.
a lot. But no, I do like him as a one shot. Like he's a decent little like quirky sort of storyteller, and he
Yeah.
has a bit of a charisma about him. And yeah, I quite like the scenes with him and Buffy. Actually, you know,
Yes.
when he really gets on Buffy's nerves.
Yeah, like when she's all like, I'm going to pull out your ribcage and wear it as a hat. And he's just like, hello
Yeah, that's
to
really
the imagery.
dark line,
Yeah, it's like, that's violent.
Yeah, he's fine. I think he serves a purpose quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
think he
those
worked as a
flashbacks
one-shot
well.
character, but I remember hearing a rumor that he was going to be like the Doyle character in Angel, and I'm very glad that didn't happen, because I feel like Whistler is a character that if you overused him, he'd start to get annoying. I think he
Yeah, I
works,
could see that.
yeah, just well enough for this episode. His moments
I
with Buffy are
think
good, but yeah.
it's partly because there is something a little bit roguish, a little bit maybe
Yes.
sleazy about him. So
Yes,
I think
yes.
maybe those elements would have become more apparent if you got more of him. So yeah, I sort of agree that he works as a one shot.
Mm. And there's so many little things about Becoming that I also love. Just don't even really move the story along. Like, I love Xander's reenactment of Buffy's fight with the fish fingers. I think that is one of just so much fun. And of course you have the scene where they find the floppy disk. That's a great scene as well. And I also love Angel's immolationogram. I think that is a great moment in the series and is actually quite
What's
menacing. The vampire who walks into Buffy's classroom and just sets herself on fire.
Oh
It's
yeah,
all like,
yeah, that is a
So I
good
thought-
scene. Yeah.
yeah. So again, there's just like all these really fun little moments throughout Becoming, but you also have some really serious, really intense moments. I mean, that scene in the library when Buffy presents the soul restoration, and they're all arguing over whether or not they should restore Angel's soul. And I mean, Xander has some class moments in that scene. I think Becoming does not bring out Xander's best.
I think no, I would agree, and I think that's a good example of Willow shining and Xander being a bit of a douchebag, a bit of an asshole. Because obviously, on some levels, you can see where he's coming from.
Yes,
but
you can.
We know, and we know Buffy's better than that. We know that she just wouldn't make that decision willy-nilly. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion tied up in it, you know, so you can understand what Xander's saying, but it is very, very harsh to put it in those black and white sort of terms. It's a lot more complicated than that. And
I think it's a hard scene because I think everyone has a point in that scene. And I mean, I agree with Buffy when she says what happened to Angel wasn't his fault. But I also agree with Xander when he says, yeah, but what happened to Miss Calendar was, you know, it's a very hard, very rough decision, like place to be in. But I do think that Xander saying you want to forget all about Miss Calendar's death so you can get your boyfriend back is incredibly harsh. And it's like, Xander, you're doing once again, you've boiled the concept down to its simplest form, and you're being a dickwad. And I think that because he knows Buffy, you know, he knows that she wouldn't make this kind of decision lightly. He knows everything she's sacrificed, everything she's given up, everything she gives for the cause. and just
Because
making it that
that's I think that's a line too far when he just, that's the moment he steps over the line, because
yes,
a lot of the
absolutely.
other stuff in the scene you can see where he's coming from. There's
Yeah.
obviously a lot of emotion, but yeah, that's what I mean about Willow being, she gets it just right in the scene, because she turns to Buffy and says, you know, what do you want to do? She like gives her the agency and the opportunity. So that's the scene where, and it's so funny, it's this funny footnote, isn't it? And we're going to talk about this much later, but the whole thing where Xander tells Buffy the lie, you know, the kick is up. It's funny that they actually picked that back up right in the last season. They actually,
I know. I wish that had come up earlier. Oh, I get so annoyed that does not ever get addressed properly. It's terrible.
No, but it's also, I think it's also, it actually makes that conversation in season 7 all the more impactful in a way, the fact that it waits so long.
Fair
but
enough.
It is surprising, then, because like at that stage you've forgotten about it and you'd think, well, that's not going to be brought up again.
Yeah.
And I do think, unfortunately, we see some bad sides to Xander. I think him being misleading in that scene is another mistake, another down point.
I know. I defend Xander a lot, and I even defend him a lot when it comes to Angel, and I do think that the show doesn't explore it that well, but I do think that part of his issue with Angel is linked to what happened with Jesse and how his friend was turned and he was immediately told, this isn't your friend anymore, you have to kill him, whereas Buffy lets her boyfriend live for so many months and doesn't kill him. But the kick his ass line is just Xander being an asshole. You know, I think that's it. And I mean, it took me years to forgive him for that. And like for so long, I hated Xander for that line and for that action. And I just think it is one of his worst moments in the show. And that by not telling Buffy that Willow was attempting to spell, I mean, she might have fought harder. She might have tried differently. She might have gone with a different tack to keep Angel away from a coupler, but she didn't know. And she had the right to know. She had the right to know that Willow was trying that spell again. And the fact that Xander didn't tell her was pretty shit of him. And I think is a pretty bad moment of his. And I think, part 2 of the finale obviously has some really big emotional moments that, you know, we're basically just riding this roller coaster. I think the confrontation between Buffy and Joyce is really intense, and I'm actually interested to see what your thoughts are on Joyce in that scene. Where do you come down? Do you think she's being too harsh? Do you think she actually intended to kick Buffy out? Where do you stand?
They've got to go and save the world. They've got to deal with Angelus. And she's definitely right in what she's saying, that unfortunately there's not really the time to do this. We can have this conversation later. And it's an interesting scene because it's always a big moment in these sorts of shows, you know, the mother finds out style moment. And I just want to say, I know you haven't got round to watching it, but there's a similar thing in Roswell. And not in the same way, but it's to do with the fact that they're aliens and the parents kind of eventually like finding that out. But or like I won't say much more, but the way they handle it in Roswell is absolutely terrible. It's so rushed. It's like literally the last episode. I won't say any more, but like the way they handle it in this is like in comparison very good. Like the way Buffy explains it and Joyce's reaction, her doing the double take, and just the way that scene sort of plays out, and there's some good humor, obviously, pretending they're in a band together.
I love that whole exchange. It's really just like, what, your mum doesn't know? Know what? That I'm in a band, a rock band with Spike here. Yeah, she plays the triangle drums. And what do you do? Well, I sing. Spike and Joyce. Oh, and Spike and Joyce sitting in the living room awkwardly.
Like School Hard, don't they? That's very good.
Have we met? So, you hit me with an axe once. Remember? Get the hell away from my daughter. Oh, right. Yep. So good.
But no, yeah, it's a good scene. It's well handled considering how difficult those scenes are to like do. And one layer of realism I like about it is when Buffy says about, didn't you notice? What do you think's been going on with me coming home late all this time, with you washing blood out of my clothes? That's actually a really good detail, because again, that's a bit like the stuff we were saying with Snyder earlier about, it's just one of these things where, like, realistically living in the same house, it would be very hard for Buffy over time to keep these things private and secret. And so it's almost this idea that on some level Joyce did know that there was something going on, but she just wanted to shut it out, or maybe was just oblivious, or wasn't quite able to like face up to it. So it's just those little touches of storytelling which I think actually make it a little bit more like realistic in those cases. But no, yeah, Joyce is very harsh in the scene, so I mean, I'm definitely more on Buffy's side, but also it feels like a very realistic scene. It feels like the sort of reaction a parent would have when this news comes out of nowhere, and she has very little time to like process it. So once again, it's a good example of the show capturing those raw slice of life moments where you say things in the heat of the moment and you just wish you could take them back later. And that's why the way the episode ends is so powerful, so devastating with Buffy. Feeling she can't go home, she sort of has to. She leaves the note, but then like leave town. So it's a very well done scene. I'm definitely more on Buffy's side in the scene, but at the same time, I get Joyce's thing, and it does feel like a very heat of the moment reactionary sort of scene.
Well, my unpopular take on this scene is that I don't believe that Joyce actually intended to kick Buffy out of the house. I think that she was bluffing, and Buffy called her bluff, because I definitely am like you. I am more on Buffy's side, but I do have a lot of sympathy for Joyce, because I think in this moment, like, she's just had this huge info dump put on her, she suddenly realized that this daughter that she has, that she thinks is just a bit of a troublemaker, is actually like this person that has like this duty and like has to go and save the world. And I think because she's only just gotten this information and she's only just received like what's going on, she doesn't quite grasp that it is literally the end of the world. I think that she thinks that maybe Buffy's just exaggerating, and all she wants is for Buffy to just stay there and talk to her, tell her what's going on. But of course, because we know Buffy's on a time crunch, because we know people have died, because we know people are in the hospital, we know that Buffy has to get out of this situation, but Joyce doesn't. So I think when Buffy goes to leave the house, Joyce says, don't even think about coming back, because that is her last desperate attempt to get Buffy to stay in the house and talk to her. But unfortunately, Buffy calls her bluff and she does leave. So, but that's just my take. I don't think Joyce genuinely meant it. I think Joyce was desperate and she was trying to stop Buffy from leaving the house. And that was her like last attempt. And unfortunately, events unfolded and Buffy felt that she couldn't go back. So again, I don't view Joyce quite as harshly as I think some of the fandom does in this scene. I don't think she handles things great, obviously. She definitely is very harsh with Buffy and doesn't grasp the situation. But I also feel really sorry for her at the end of the episode when she comes up and she finds Buffy's room empty and she finds the note, because she must feel so much guilt in that moment of, oh my God, what have I done? I've driven my child away, when that was not her intention. So I think that scene is just written so well and is so tense. And I think Christine Sutherland and Sarah Michelle Gellar really have good chemistry. Yeah, and they work
they're
really
one of
well.
the great TV mother and daughters,
yes,
I
think
definitely.
So. Yeah, definitely.
And that's why, obviously, the loss in season 5 hit so hard. But
yes.
I also want to say, just adding to some of the stuff you were saying, I think sometimes the critics of Joyce underestimate how difficult being a single parent is. And obviously Buffy is at a crucial stage in her life, in her like development as a young woman. And yeah, when you are a single parent and there's a lot of issues going on, it's not easy. I think, you know,
and we
I
know
think
she's
that
not
plays a
getting any
part.
help from Hank, the
Terrible
bastard.
Hank,
So terrible Hank. So yeah, it's just if you look at things from Joyce's point of view, I mean, a year and a half ago, her daughter burned down the school and got kicked out, and that's like literally all she knows, you know. So yes, sometimes she is harsh on Buffy. Sometimes I think she's just reacting to the only information she's got in front of her. And does she always handle things well? No, but I don't think she's anywhere near as bad as a lot of the fandom make her out to be. And I think in this instance, she deserves a little bit more sympathy and understand. And I mean, you know, and again, we'll talk about this more when we get into season 3. But once she starts to accept Buffy's slaying, she starts to like, you know, accept it and integrate. Gingerbread, she tries to go slaying with her, brings her a like snack and everything. So, you know, she definitely gets better. But this is a lot of information to be dumped on her at the one time in a situation where her daughter's come home with some strange man, is saying, my boyfriend's about to end the world, I have to leave. I mean, what's any parent going to do in that situation?
Yeah, there's more ground to cover in season 3, definitely. So we will get there. Yeah, obviously we've been talking about it really, but just such a fantastic climax to the episode. Everything that happens, the stakes are just so high. They're at their pinnacle. Everything's built to this. It's just an great example of serialized storytelling, really climaxing. And I really love like the whole, you know, a Cathras statue, like the look of that, the gargoyle type look, and just all the stakes that goes into it, and the different sort of twists and turns. The fact that Spike obviously does a spike, and because he has that look back, he's like, oh, he's gonna kill her.
Oh God, he's gonna kill her. And he's like, they just walk off.
Because I quite like when he knocks Drew out. He says, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you.
Doesn't mean I won't. Exactly. Oh, also, I love him earlier in the episode when they first bring a car through. It's like, oh, it's a big rock. Can't wait to tell my friends. They don't have a rock this big.
And one of the funniest scenes in the episode is the scene, you know, obviously it's heartbreaking as well, but it turns funny. But you know when Drew pretends to be Jenny and
oh yes, and yes, I know what you're talking about. The end bit where she's still making out with Giles. Kissing. Yeah, it's like, Drusilla, honey, we are done here. But oh my God, that scene, oh my God, so devastating. I forgot how fucking devastating that scene is, pardon my French. Because just, I mean, and again, this is why I say Giles gets to hate Angel forever. I mean, the torture that Angel puts him through, like you said, he tortured him for hours just because he could. And that scene.
Yeah, because there's a really dark line about him getting the chainsaw out at one point. Oh, okay, where the fuck are we going?
It's like, well, the last time I tortured someone, I didn't even have chainsaws. And then later on, he's like, all right, that's it. Get me the chainsaw.
But yeah, that's the whole thing about it. It's like it's both physical torture and emotional torture. Just
that being said,
the worst
Giles is a badass. I mean, he's being tortured by one of the most evil vampires in history, and he tells him to perform the ritual.
Yeah, that's so great.
In a tutu. Pillock. And I'm like, oh, Giles, you are awesome. I also love at the end when Xander comes to rescue him and he's all like, oh, Xander, they're making me see what I want to see. And Xander's like, then why would they make you see me? And he's like, yep, you're right, let's go. But no, that scene with Jenny, like bringing back Rabia Lamont, you feel so bad for him. And just, you can feel how much he's still grieving her, you know, like just the way, I mean, Tony Head in that scene is brilliant, and just the expression on his face when he first sees her, and he's like, Jenny, I thought you'd gone, and it's just you just want to cry because you just know how badly. But then then they do that brilliant thing where they just make it hilarious at the end. It's like, sorry, I was in the moment.
But it's also just another little nice add-on that adds to Drew's character, the fact she can actually do that stuff. It's just another nice little
really
gimmick.
cool. Yeah, you really see how, again, menacing Drew is in Becoming Part 1 and Part 2. Because, when she kills Kendra and then, her manipulation of Giles, she's awesome. But I have to say, the final showdown between Buffy and Angel, the sword fight, so well choreographed, so beautifully filmed. And it has one of my favorite Buffy Summers moments. When Angel's got her cornered, so that's it, huh? Take everything away, no friends, no family, and what's left? And then just the me. And it's just such a moment, because you can just feel her just gathering herself together. And then, of course, we have the climax, which is just the most heartbreaking thing. Again, I don't care if you ship Buffy and Angel. I don't think you can watch this scene and not get upset, because you have to feel everything from Buffy's point of view.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you're invested in Buffy. That's the whole point. And it's just great storytelling, and the whole payoff. Yeah, it couldn't be any more emotional. And once again, it's a great character beat for her. The fact that she is, even when she realizes he's got his soul back, she knows she still has to make that difficult decision for the sake of the world, basically,
Really emphasizes her duty as the Slayer and what it means to be a hero. And again, it falls back on you have a choice. You don't have a great choice, but you have a choice. And unfortunately, that's what she has to do. And again, like we talked about, that beautiful score, Close Your Eyes, is just one of the most gorgeous scores to come out of. Yeah. And I think this episode, Sarah is such a great actress, and her portrayal as Buffy is so good. But I think the emotion she shows in this climax, when she realizes it's Angel, and you just see her face like break, because she'd come here prepared to kill Angelus. She was ready. She'd gotten herself typed up. She'd accepted that Angel wasn't coming back. She was like, this is it. And then, like, literally, as she's about to give the killing blow, he returns. And the fact that he doesn't remember anything. Oh, and then, of course, the Close Your Eyes, which, of course, mirrors the beautiful scene of Darla siring Angel. Of the parallels between Darla and Buffy and how they both kill Angel.
Yeah, that's a nice little touch as well, isn't it?
It's so funny that us Bangels, we all associate the Close Your Eyes line with Buffy and Angel, but it was technically Darla's first. It was Darla who says the line first. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, because that's the fact that it's in that episode. It's definitely an intentional thing.
Yes.
They point out that it's from Angelus's past, and
yeah,
I like how there is a lot of parallels with that, because even the scene where Drusilla kills Kendra, in a way, like she's putting her to sleep in a trance.
Yes, and she says, "Be in my eyes." Yeah,
there's almost enough there.
Becoming is just one of those beautiful episodes where everything just kind of comes together and just works so well. You have some beautiful little character moments, like Willow, like Xander, asking Willow to wake up, and then she wakes up and asks for Oz. Cordy and Xander have a really cute moment where they actually embrace and look affectionate. Let's talk about Willow for 2 seconds, though. Willow, who's never cast a spell in her entire life, manages to channel some of the oldest and most ferocious magic ever. You have to wonder if this is if this was the gate that opened for her path. Giles even says to her, if you open this gate, you might not be able to close it, because she has
which feels like a fitting line when you see what happens later on.
Yeah,
it's a funny sort of thing, because I sort of feel what they do later on, in season 6, and I think actually that is just something they came up with closer to. I don't believe that they had that in mind.
No, I don't think they did. No.
But I think they definitely had an idea that maybe in the future Willow would continue to experiment with magic, and who knows, they might even have had an idea that she would actually become a full-time sort of witch thing. But it's it is good that we see the seeds of this very early on, because we even see, don't we, Oz showing concern, he's like, is this supposed to happen? I think
in retrospect, this scene really emphasizes, because they actually say this later on in the series, I think Amy says it in season 7, that Willow always had all the power. Even before she knew what to do with it, she always had all the power. And I think you can look at this scene in retrospect of the other seasons and say, yes, this really does. I mean, the woman performs magic that has been lost to Jenny's people for decades, and she manages to do it. And I know that she's channeling a little bit, but I think that could only have happened if she was powerful to begin with. And of course, as we see Willow and her magical development go on, we see that she has a lot of power that she doesn't quite know what to do with or how to use or how to channel. And I think this spell really was the start of it.
The resolve face line. She tells
So
everyone,
cute.
you know,
So
you
cute.
see the
Resolve
face, you can't stop me. Yeah,
She's just so cute.
she's so adorable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so good.
Love it. But yeah, no, Becoming for so long was my favorite season finale. It's now my second favorite. But it's just
very good.
gorgeous. It's put together so well, and it just really brings the season to a great end. You know, it really ties up everything that we've been following this season. We see Spike and Drew leave town. We get the conclusion to Angel and Buffy and Jealous. We get, you know, return of Jenny. We get to see all the couples together at the end. It's beautiful. And then you have that kind of gorgeous ending of the now leaving Sunnydale, which makes you go, oh, what's going to happen next season? Where are we going to be next season? Where's Buffy going to be? And I also believe, I could be wrong about this, but I'm fairly certain that if David hadn't been spun off onto Angel, they actually were going to kill Angel in this episode. Like, this was going to be the end of Buffy and Angel. And if that had been the case, that would have been a really gorgeous end to that relationship, I think.
Maybe they only brought him back in season 3 because they decided to give him his own show.
I think he was brought back in season 3 to build up Angel as a show. And if not, I think this would have been the end of it. And I think that would have been a beautiful end, a very tragic end, but that's fitting. I mean, what else is going to happen when you're dating a vampire? It can only end in tragedy. Yes, full of grace.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's one of those scenes I get emotional every time I'm watching.
Yeah. You should have seen me at the end of it. I was in floods of tears. I'm sitting there like, oh no, she has to kill Angel, and then I'm crying more. Oh yeah, I was a wreck by the end of this finale.
So devastating, that end scene. It's just so well directed and choreographed, and the use of music. Yeah, it's a great end. I mean, it's the sort of season finale you get very rarely nowadays, where it pays everything off so well.
It does.
And it's what the season has been building to, which makes it all the more special. And you know, you even get a little hook for next season because of Buffy leaving town and what's going to happen there. You know, how is she going to integrate herself back into Sunnydale when she does come back? So it actually leaves a really dramatic cliffhanger.
It does.
Next season as well. So that's the way you want to do it, really. It's the ideal way to end the season.
It's perfect. Oh, such a great season 2. I know it gets off to a bit of a slow start, but it just barrels towards its finale by the end, and so many great episodes and some great characterization this season.
Would you rate the season?
I'd probably give season 2 an 8 out of 10. I think that it is let down by its lesser episodes, and I do think it does unfortunately take a little bit of time to find its feet, because it's still kind of coming off from season 1, and season 1 is mostly a Monster of the Week season, so you don't feel that jarring when you don't have an overall arc, whereas because season 2, from What's My Line to Becoming, is pretty much a complete arc, it means those first group of episodes, they feel almost like it's like season 2 and then season 2.1, you know? So I can't give it quite a perfect score, but I think 8 out of 10 would be fair, because it's got such strong characterization. I love all the couples in this season. I love watching Buffy's journey. Spike and Drew are great villains, and Jealous is a great villain. It's got a great finale. It really is one of the strongest seasons of the show. So yeah, I'd go with 8 out of 10 for season 2. What about you?
Okay, yeah, I'll go a little bit higher. I'll give it the 8.5. Yeah. Nice. I think I'm in agreement with you then, because of some of the weaker episodes that drag it down. And yeah, then it's not quite up there with the best seasons of the show, but it is very good. And like you, I would possibly put it as one of my favourite seasons. But yeah, it is just a little bit of inconsistency with certain episodes that maybe mean that it's not quite that top level. But
yeah.
obviously, there are some of the greatest episodes of the show in here, and some of the best writing of the whole show as well.
Yes.
So when it's good, it's very good. And overall, it is a game-changing season, which changes the whole show. So that's very exciting to see unfold. So yeah, I'll go 8.5. So,
nice.
So a little bit higher. So that's season 2. We will return, obviously, in the future with season 3. We also return soon with our best and worst episodes of the season.
The episode, there's 144 episodes in total. This is going to be a big list.
Like it will be. Okay.
All right.
So bearing in mind, I've actually started on season 3. So the first 2 episodes of season 3 will be in this list, and we'll come back to them. But so I'll just start at the top and work my way down, basically. So my number 1 episode at the moment, which will please you, is actually Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered.
Nice,
Absolute
very nice.
Classic episode. So
great
I've
episode.
That at the top. Then number 2 is Becoming, part 1 and 2. Great finale, wonderful finale. Once again, I treat it as a complete story.
Yes, me too.
Number 3, another big 2-parter is Surprise and Innocence. So that's
Lovely.
in my top 3. Number 4, Passion. We spoke quite a lot about. Number 5, School Hard, which obviously I enjoy a bit more than you, but great debut for Spike. Number 6, I Only Have Eyes for You. Number 7, Number 7 is What's My Line, part 1 and 2.
I love that 2-parter. That's a great 2-parter.
Some great stuff in there.
Yes.
Number 8 is Prophecy Girl. So the season 1 finale still going strong in my list.
Great finale.
Number 9 is Lie to Me. We're both pretty big on that. And it's quite underrated. Number 10, which we will talk more about next season, but number 10 is Anne, which is the season 3 opener. Number 11 is Halloween, really fun Halloween-style episode. Number 12, When She Was Bad, the opener for season 2. Number 13, Ted, which I realised would be a bit higher for me than it would be for you. I enjoy that one a bit more. Number 14, The Beloved Puppet Show.
Yes.
Still going strong. Number 15 is Angel from season 1.
Great episode.
Number 16 is The Pack. We both think that one's underrated. Number 17, Witch. Number 18, Welcome to the Hellmouth. Number 19, Killed by Death. Number 20, Dead Man's Party. Again, more on that next season when we get to it. Number 21 is The Harvest. Number 22 is The Dark Age.
Okay.
Number 23 is Phases. Number 24, I, Robot You, Jane. I'm sure that's still too high.
Way too high. Especially you'll probably hate when you see some stuff below. But number 25, Reptile Boy, the big giant penis. Number 26, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. Number 27, Out of Mind, Out of Sight. Number 28 is an episode we didn't talk about, but I think it's a weaker episode. It's Bad Eggs. I hate Bad Eggs. Okay. Oh, God.
Enjoyable stuff in there, but I think that's a weaker one. Number 29, Screw You, Rachel, It's Nightmares.
Oh, you suck.
What a mediocre episode.
How can you rate Nightmares below Bad Eggs? Come on, dude. That is pathetic.
It's only one place.
Still.
Okay. Number 30 is Some Assembly Required. Number 31, Inca Mummy Gal.
Yeah.
First appearance of Jonathan and Oz. That's probably the standout.
That's probably it, yeah.
32 Teacher's Pet. I still hate it. I'm still gonna fight you
Look,
on that
I
one.
get that. That one's more of like a guilty pleasure for me. I just I
And
just find
can
it
you
fun.
work out what the bottom episode is?
What have you still got? It's got to be something from season 1, right?
No.
No. Okay. Hang on. What haven't you said? Okay, so it's something in season 2. So what haven't you mentioned? It's got to be Go Fish.
Go Fish, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
that's a
that's
great episode.
truly one of the worst episodes of the whole show, and
Mhm.
probably gets docked even more because for some reason they put it before the finale, which was just baffling.
Weird placement.
Yeah, that episode really sucks. So yeah, Go Fish is number 33. So there you have it. So BB and the 3 Bs at the top, Go Fish at the bottom.
Nice.
That sounds. So I think most of that you were on board with. It was
most
just
of
the
them I'm on
odd
board with.
entry.
Nightmares could be,
It could
up
be
there because it's actually a fun episode, but never mind. Keith is wrong often, so we'll forgive him for this. But no, that's a pretty good ranking, I think, so far. Yeah, guys, you can follow me, Rachel Macdonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. I do have some Buffy stuff on there, so if you want to come over and check it out, my Tumblr's linked through there. So is my Twitter, but given what's happening over on Twitter these days, I do not know if I'm going to be there for much longer.
What a fun place.
I know, right? So just come follow my Tumblr. I'm always on Tumblr, so come follow me everywhere. Keith usually puts a link in the description.
Okay, and I'm going to end with a classic spotlight. So, Rachel, from now on, we're going to have a little bit less ritual and a lot more fun. The annoying one goes up in smoke.
Yes, he does.
See you soon, guys. Take care.